Chapter 10:17. At 5 p.m., the sky was covered by dark clouds and thunder rumbled. The local government had issued a red alert for a thunderstorm and canceled all outdoor Halloween celebrations. They advised the citizens not to go out on foot. At that time, the three members from Blades arrived at the old house on Dark Creek Road. Naturally, the three of them did not know that Underworld Frontline had lost a member as well. From their perspective, they were in a disadvantageous situation of 3 against 4. Therefore, Tan Lang's strategy was to temporarily avoid direct conflict and try to expand the plot, using the benefits in the scenario to make up for their disadvantage. Looks like someone has beaten us to it. Seeing the ambulance parked before the old house, Brother Long grumbled. How come I have a feeling this ambulance might be a trap? 7 kills reminded him. Why don't we give it a try? Tan Lang said as he walked forward. I'll check the front, and you guys check the back. Be careful when you check. By then, the man in the suit that they had captured had already driven back. Before he turned around and drove away, he even rolled down the window and cursed at the 3 players. However, Brother Long did not mind it, considering that the man in the suit had been threatened by the 3 children and had not only lost a lot of the food he had just bought, but he had also been kicked and punched. They did not mind letting him vent his anger. I don't find anything here. 2 minutes later, Tan Lang finished inspecting the driver's seat. He jumped out of the car and asked his teammates, "How's the back?" At that moment, Brother Long jumped out from the back with something in his hand. There's a body bag covered in blood and fur. He showed the bag to his teammates and added, "As you can see, the person who was originally inside is no longer there." Tan Lang leaned in to take a closer look. After 2 seconds, he said, "Could it be? This bag once contained a werewolf." Huh? Why would you think that? Brother Long scratched his head and asked with confusion. It's not hard to guess. Tan Lang replied, "Generally speaking, body bags are only used to store human corpses, but the things in this bag have animal hair, and..." He pointed at the few tears on the bag. Sharp claws. Long Almeen raised the body bag high above his head, and he turned to look at it. "Oh, it's true. Look at this tear mark," Tan Lang said. "If it was scratched by an animal, it means that the animal has 5 fingers on its forelimbs, and the distance between the fingers is similar to that of a human. Other than that, it is covered in fur, and its size is perfect for a body bag." He paused for a second. "Instead of thinking about it as an animal, why don't you consider it as a monster based on the setting of this scenario?" Understood. Long Almeen understood. When he was placed inside the body bag, the werewolf probably hadn't transformed yet, and he was heavily injured. But when he came out, he already had fur and claws. "Yes, that's right." Tan Lang nodded. "Then how do you explain that?" While they were talking, 7 kills poked his head out from the ambulance and waved at them. Brother Long and Tan Lang looked at each other and followed him. "Look, here, and the seats over there." After his teammates followed him, 7 kills used his hand to guide their line of sight. "Do you see that? There are 2 puddles of something sticky and wet." Tan Lang observed for a while and said, "Based on our previous thought, could this come from some kind of monster that can secrete liquid? Then, there's an 80% chance it is." Brother Long shrugged. From the introductory cinematic, the monsters in this scenario are more than just vampires. Since werewolves have appeared, it wouldn't be strange for something like a water monster to appear as well, right? So, the conclusion is, 7 kills continued. Someone, or rather, a monster, stole an ambulance and carried a carriage full of monsters to this room. "Sounds about right," Tan Lang added. Greedy Wolf added as he took out a piece of craft paper from his backpack. "This also confirms my previous deduction. The piece of brown paper that he was holding was the reward that he, in defeating armies, had obtained after spending an hour shoveling the fallen leaves. According to their father in the scenario, this was a treasure map drawn by his 2 sons when they went to explore the old house on Dark Creek Road in the 1st grade. Of course, it was more like a child's doodling than a treasure map. However, Tan Lang managed to come up with some accurate information through this doodling. The fact that there are monsters gathered here further proves," Tan Lang continued, "that the holy amulet is inside this old house. At the same time, in the underground hall of the old house, more guests have arrived. Dracula, who has eyes closed, suddenly said, "Oh." At that moment, Fong Bujue was sitting on a stone step, flipping through an ancient book that he had gotten from who knew where. After hearing that, he asked without raising his head, "How many people? What kind of people?" "Three in total." Dracula stood 2 meters away from him and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "Two of them are little boys, and the last one is a very tall little boy." "Ha! I already know who it is." Fong Bujua laughed. "Since they have come to us, then let's start the ceremony in advance." On the other hand, on a highway east of Dark Creek Road, damn it, Hill, who came back to his senses, unbuckled his seat belt, opened the door, and got out of the car. He angrily ran to a Volvo that was more than 10 meters behind him. A minute ago, his car and the Volvo met on the road. Because this road was in a deserted area and had been in disrepair for a long time, the shoulders on both sides of the road were damaged to a certain extent. Coincidentally, the damage on the road where the two cars met was particularly obvious. This caused the two cars to have to pass through the middle of the road one after the other. Seeing this, Hill took the lead and honked a warning. He meant to ask the car, coming from the opposite side, to slow down a little and move aside. However, the guy coming from the opposite side was the man in the suit that was kidnapped by Daofeng. Hill was more anxious, and he honked first, so he would not move aside. As for the man in the suit, he was used to taking advantage of small advantages, cutting the queue, bullying the weak and fearing the strong, and occupying the parking space for the disabled. People like him, obviously, he would not move aside either. Therefore, the two cars had a friction. Then, one of the tires on each side of the road slipped off the road, and they stumbled to a stop. Fortunately, both drivers turned the steering wheel and released the throttle before the collision. Otherwise, both cars might have flipped over. "Hey, be asterisk starred." Hill roared as he walked toward the other car. "Are you blind or deaf?" The man in the suit also got out of the car at this time. He turned to look at Hill and said, "I want to ask you, how are you going to compensate me?" He waved his hand to indicate the scratched car body. "Do you know how much it will cost to repair this scar?" "I don't know the price, but I think it will heal faster than you," Hill said. The man in the suit did not seem to understand what Hill meant. He asked, "What do you mean by its injury should?" Bang! Hill's fist interrupted the man in the suit, and the latter was knocked to the ground. "Oh, ah." After the man in the suit fell to the ground, he covered his face and screamed, You be asterisk starred. I'm going to sue you for intentional injury." "No, it's murder. Sounds like you know a little about the law." "Humph." Hill kicked the man's arm twice as she asked this question. Ah. The man in the suit screamed and threatened. "I'm warning you. My uncle's husband is a lawyer." "Is that so?" Hill said as he leaned over and grabbed the man's hair. He put his face close and said, "Then I'll teach you on behalf of your uncle. If I really murder you, the district attorney will sue me. I don't need a dead man to sue me." After that, Hill grabbed the car door with his other hand, held the man's head up, and hit him 3 times with the car door. After that, the man in the suit fainted on the spot. Hill spat at the man, feeling satisfied. He turned around and prepared to go back to his car. Unexpectedly, at this time, there was a sudden change. In the distant sky, there was a black pillar of light that shot up into the sky. An invisible energy that even Hill could feel spread from that direction and engulfed the whole land. At 5:10 p.m., outside a power plant at the edge of the city, Ruo Yu and Xiaoling had just finished a whole side quest. They came out from the power plant with the quest reward, and they felt the impact of that energy. Even though they had turned into lowly biologically, the two were not so easily knocked down. They only staggered a little before they steadied themselves. "I have a feeling." Ruo Yu looked at the black pillar of light and said, "The thing that happened there has to be related to Bujue. After all, we have finished the quest chain." Xiaoling added, "Let's go take a look." "I will use that." Ruo Yu nodded. That she mentioned was the reward that they had just received. Magic Broom X2 item name. Magic Broom item type. Other quality. Excellent special effect. Cleans up dust or acts as a carrier can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. Normally, whether wearing a skirt or pants, We do not recommend ladies to straddle the carrier. That is very unladylike behavior. These two brooms were the final reward of the Tea Party quest. Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling ran from morning to night, and in between, they ran into a battle with blade and blade. Finally, in the 9th hour since the scenario started, they finished this super long quest. The 2 reward items that they had obtained would no doubt give them a huge advantage in the upcoming scenario. At 5:12 p.m., Dark Creek Road, where the old house used to be. At that moment, the old house was gone, and in its place was a gothic-looking black castle. What's going on? 7 Kills muttered in a daze as he stared at the scene before him with an ashen face. Yeah, Tan Lang, what's going on? Brother Long, who was standing in the middle, threw the question to Tan Lang like he was a mouthpiece. Even though I would like to say, "You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask?" Tan Lang's expression was similar to the other two. But considering that I am the strategist and the current commander of this team, I think I should give you a clear answer. He paused. These are all special effects. Half a minute earlier, the 3 of them had been carefully moving down the corridor of the old house. Suddenly, a black turbulence came from who knew where and blocked their sight. Then, they felt the shaking like an earthquake and the noise of the neighbor next door who was in the midst of renovation. Half a minute later, when their sight recovered, they realized that they were standing inside the door of a castle. Behind them was a drawbridge that was half suspended by chains, and there was a moat below the door. Right in front of them was an arched, tall, double-opened wooden door, which was the inner door of the castle. "You might as well say that it's an illusion," Brother Long said. "I would believe it if you said that I've been tricked," 7 Kills said. "You're the one who asked the question, and you're the one who complained." Tan Lang narrowed his eyes. "Are you guys keyboard warriors? Write up a report and change your profession tomorrow. Strategist, please keep a low profile," Brother Long said. "This is a live broadcast. Don't make it sound like we can change professions so easily. That will only make people jealous. Stop wasting time. Lead the way." Tan Lang used the body of a 10-year-old boy to give an order to Long Aomin. Okay. Brother Long, who was 7 meters tall, had no choice but to follow the order. After all, Tan Lang's rank in the unit was indeed higher than his. To cut the long story short, with Long Aomin leading the way, the 3 pushed open the heavy wooden door and entered the first room inside the castle. Standing at the door, it was a large space that was 8 meters tall, 10 meters wide, and about 100 meters long. The 4 sides of the space were made from gray stone bricks. The walls on both sides were broken, and there was light from an unknown source that filtered through the walls. Other than that, for some unknown reason, when Blade and the other 2 stepped through the door, a system notification rang in their ears at the same time. Desolate city corridor. The announcement came out of nowhere. Brother Long opened the game menu to check, but there was no new quest. There was no change in the status bar or inventory. It looked like the system had merely given them the name of the place. This was something that they had not encountered in any of the previous scenarios, and today, this was the first time. Chapter 10:18. Creak. Bang. 2 seconds later, with a creak, the door behind Brother Long closed on its own. The 3 of them did not try to open it because they were already prepared to explore further. As experienced players, the members of Blade Edge had a clear psychological advantage when facing monsters. Compared to normal players, they thought the monsters in the scenario were easier to deal with. We've just stepped through the door, and something has already come to welcome us. After walking for less than 10 meters, Brother Long, who was responsible for scouting ahead, stopped moving. At that moment, on the gray ground before him, about 10 small puddles about 1 meter in diameter appeared. They were puddles, but there was no water at all. They were just small pieces of ground that had been liquefied, and they were rippling. About 1 second later, a zombie with a green body and ugly face floated out from each of the puddles. Their movement pattern was similar to most low-level zombies. A low growl came from their throats, and they raised their hands and slowly walked toward the living humans. "This method of farming sure is cool," 7 Kills said with condescension. "Unfortunately, The monsters that spawn are nothing special. They move very slowly. If we can, we'll try our best to avoid them. If we can't, we'll just deal with them, Greedy Wolf instructed. The space inside this castle is obviously bigger than it looks from the outside. There is no telling how many monsters are inside. We don't need to waste time and energy here. Understood. Long Almine answered and took out his sorcery weapon, ready to lead the way. Name: Orichalcos _shield. Item type: sorcery weapon quality. Legendary defense points. Extremely strong element. Absorb, block, buffer, special effect 1. Orichalcum's barrier. When the Orichalcum shield is under attack, the user can freely switch between the thrust, penetrating, and vibrating forces of the attack according to the user's will. Special effect 2. Orichalcos aura. The user can sacrifice 15% of their life points to nullify the next attack that the shield is under. Special effect 3. Orichalcos toritos. The Orichalcos shield provides 300% defense against magic and all flying items. Remark: a dream shield forged from orichalcon crystal, imbued with the divine power of the god of orichalcon. It is like an impenetrable moving barrier. As you can see, this is a legendary sorcery weapon. It is on the same level as Shiva's complete heavenly hourglass. Its effect is obvious to all. Among them, the most heaven-defying special effect was undoubtedly the aura of orichalcum. This effect was simply invincible. Theoretically speaking, once this special effect was activated, no matter how powerful the attack was, he only needed to spend 15% of his life points to tank it. This made it extremely difficult to kill Brother Long in one shot. If you attack him with an ordinary attack, his defense would be there. If you attacked him with a powerful attack, regardless of whether it was the destructive ray or the magic beam cannon, as long as he activated his special effect, he would only lose 15% of his HP. Based on this calculation, even without the life points recovery potion, he could survive at least 6 hits from the killer move, of course, if the attack speed was fast enough. So fast that Brother Long did not have time to raise his shield to block or activate his special effect. There was still a chance to kill him in one shot. But the problem was, powerful skills required a certain amount of preparation before they could be used, and the ripple of energy was not something that could be hidden. Furthermore, Brother Long was not a newbie. He was an experienced fighter. In conclusion, Long Almine, who held the Orichalcos shield, was like a moving fortress, a man of steel. This is much easier than I thought. In less than a minute, Brother Dragon led 7 kills and Tan Lang through the corridors of the abandoned city. Along the way, they only encountered 2 zombies that they could not avoid. Brother Dragon raised a shield and rammed into the 2 monsters, and they were crushed into pieces like mud. That's for sure. If it's so difficult to fly as soon as we enter the door, we can consider leaving directly, Tan Lang immediately complained. As they spoke, they passed through a stone door and arrived at the second space. Compared to the corridor earlier, this place was more like a room inside a castle. From high up, they could see the long window that was covered in red glass, and at regular intervals, they could see the candlesticks that were embedded in the wall. From here onward, the candles on the candlesticks became the main source of light for the players. Once they entered the door, 2 purple bats flew over Brother Long's head at high speed. Thankfully, Brother Long reacted quickly and lowered his head to avoid them. That scared me. Only at times like this do I feel that turning into a child is a good thing, 7 Kills said with a smile. After all, even if the sky falls, there's an adult to hold it up. Hey, Brother Long turned around and said loudly, "I've turned into a child." Okay? When he said that, many viewers who were watching the livestream laughed. All right. You should be glad, Tan Lang said. In this scenario, you're the only person whose fighting mastery and equipment bonus are not affected by your body size. We don't have that kind of advantage even if we wanted it. Okay, I'm so happy. Ha. Brother Long laughed drily and continued to lead the way. The second room before them had a very obvious difference in height. Even though the ceiling was not as high as the previous room, there seemed to be another world underneath. After entering the door, there was a wall a few meters in front of them. There was an angle at the top of the wall, and beyond that, there was a narrow passageway. Looking down, there was a downward slope, and 2 meters below the slope, there was a platform. On one side of the platform was the wall that blocked the path, and the other side extended in the direction they came from. They didn't know where it led to. How about it? Should we split up? Brother Long turned around to ask. Of course not. Before Tan Lang could reply, 7 Kills answered. If we split up in this maze-like place, I'm afraid we won't be able to meet up again. I agree, Tan Lang added. There's no advantage in splitting up in this scenario. It's fine for Brother Long, but for me and 7 Kills, our individual combat power has been greatly weakened. If we run into a boss alone, I'm afraid it won't end well for us. Then, Brother Long looked at the 2 paths before them, thought about it, and said, Shall we take the lower path? The main reason he made this choice was because he was too large, and it would be inconvenient for him to go down the upper path. Sure, let's go. Tan Lang did not say much. After all, they were still in the exploration phase, so it did not matter where they went. Therefore, the 3 slid down the slope and jumped down to the platform below. After they landed, they turned to look. On the other side, there was another downward slope. The 3 of them continued to descend and reached the bottom of the second room. Not far away, there was a red door. Based on their understanding of space, the other side of the door should be underneath the room where the zombies had spawned earlier. If they did not use this door, they could go in another direction. There was a reservoir that was about the size of a swimming pool, and in the middle of the reservoir was a floating metal platform. There was a carved pillar on the platform, and at the top of the pillar was a glowing orb. Its light lit up the whole reservoir. There's no need to ask me. Before Brother Long could ask, Tan Lang said, This is my first time here as well. Just follow your instincts. Okay, Brother Long replied in a drawn-out voice and walked forward to push the red door open. Although it was a heavy wooden door, it was still relatively easy to push it open. Brother Long used one hand to open it easily. After the 3 walked through the door, they entered a dimly lit corridor. The corridor was made from white stone, and it was built in the style of ancient Rome. There were 2 rows of pillars and fences on both sides of the corridor. The pillars and fences alternated in a regular pattern, and the pillars were connected in the shape of an arch. On the high wall, there were large bas-reliefs, and there were many small reliefs that looked like demons on both sides of the wall. From outside the fence, they could see the red light shining in, but they couldn't see what the source of the light was or how far it was. Regardless of whether they looked up or down, it was like they were looking into a blood-red abyss, and looking horizontally into the distance, they could see many similar corridors, like white passageways between nothingness floating in the red tide. Phew! What was that earlier? After passing through the white corridor and pushing open another red door, Long Aomin sighed. It felt so suffocating. Are you sure it was earlier? 7 Kills added, How come I feel like I've been suffocating since we entered the city gate? Underground Water District. Right then, the system announced the name of a location. Buzz. Suddenly, before the system finished, from the shadows before the 3 of them, a greenish-white crescent-shaped light flew toward them. What the hell is that? Brother Long grumbled as he instinctively raised his shield to block. However, once the light made contact with Orca's shield, it disappeared into thin air. It's probably some kind of long-range energy attack. 7 Kills said as he took a step to the side and looked into the distance. In less than 2 seconds, he saw the culprit behind the attack from the shadows above. It was a small red monster with short limbs, a pair of horns on its forehead, a pair of bat wings, and a small tail. Is that a small demon? Tan Lang also took a closer look at the small monster that was flying in the air and said a name that matched the monster's appearance. No matter what it is, we can't just ignore it like we did with the zombies. 7 Kills said as he raised both of his hands and unleashed a skill, Wadao Punch, at the small demon. Perhaps many of you haven't heard of Wadao Fist, so let me explain. Wadao Fist is one of Dan's signature skills. It's an improved version of the famous Hadouken. It's a very special character in the Street Fighter series. It's a product of Capcom and SNK. It's a product of the 2 protagonists of Dragon Tiger Fist, and it's designed to be so weak that it's like trash. Of course, from a direct perspective, this skill was just unleashing a shockwave through the air. Whoosh. Bang. The glow of Wadao punch rose, and it was filled with murderous intent. The small demon's flying speed was not slow, but it was still slower than the glow of the punch. In the blink of an eye, the monster was smashed into meat paste by the punch. Even though this monster can use long-range attacks, its defense is similar to the zombies outside. After 7 kills, finished his attack. He looked down at his own hands. Even if I shrunk my body and unleashed Wadao punch, it would still be able to smash it into pieces. That's enough. Stop bragging. Let's go. Brother Long didn't give 7 kills a chance to brag. He turned around and urged him before continuing to walk forward. Tan Lang and 7 kills followed closely behind. They walked down the stone steps and stepped into the damp air, at the same time outside the moat at the entrance of the castle. My God! Gil had a look of disbelief on his face as he looked at the castle before him and mumbled. What happened here? 10 minutes ago, he finished beating up the man in the suit and got back on the road. It was not until he reached the address of the old house on Dark Creek Road that he realized the place seemed to have been renovated. What's going on? The corner of Gil's mouth twitched as he mumbled to himself. Count_Duckula, a British animated film released in 1988. The castle where the main character lived in could be teleported to any part of the world through a built-in spell device and even interstellar travel. You're finally back, Mr. Gil. Just as Gil stood outside the moat in a daze, Fong Bujue's voice came from somewhere and entered his ears. You. Gil heard the voice and immediately became nervous. He looked around and said, How did you? It's above the right pocket of your coat, between the 2 layers of fabric, Brother Ju replied. Gil followed the other person's instructions and touched his clothes. As expected, he touched a flat, round, hard object in that position. He quickly realized Fong Bujue's voice came from there. You found it, right? Fong Bujue continued. This is a tracker and also has a communication function. Of course, only I can initiate communication. Where are you? Gil immediately asked in a loud voice. What's going on with this castle? Fong Bujue didn't answer his question. Instead, he asked in return, Did you get Van Helsing's diary? Gil's expression changed slightly. He snorted coldly and said, I've hidden that book in a safe place. He paused. Help me remove the chip and ensure that I leave safely, and I'll tell you where it is. Chapter 1019. Oh. Fong Bujue listened to Hill's words, and his reaction was unusually calm. I see, he muttered. Can I understand that you are negotiating with me? Yes, I am negotiating with you. Hill was also trembling in his heart, but on the surface he still looked quite tough. Heh, Fong Bujue laughed. Aren't you afraid that I will immediately read a bunch of trigger words on the other end of the communicator and electrocute you to death? Electrocute me, and you will never find Van Helsing's diary. Cold sweat trickled down Hill's temples, but he still mustered up the courage to reply. Well, not bad, Fong Bujue muttered. Your courage is not bad, and your brain is not stupid. I don't need your praise. When Hill heard that Brother Ju's attitude had eased, he breathed a sigh of relief and snorted coldly. So, what do you think of this condition? To his surprise, Fong Bujue's next reply was, Nothing much. What? Hill was shocked. Don't you want the diary? Fong Bujue laughed again. Although I said that you are not stupid, that doesn't mean that you are smart enough to play with me. He paused for 2 seconds before continuing. Mr. Hill, I think I should remind you again. At this moment, the thing you are wearing is a tracker. A tracker. A tracker. As the saying went, important things needed to be said 3 times. So Fong Bujue repeated the word 3 times in a gradually louder tone and volume. After being yelled at by him, Hill finally realized the problem. You know where I've been. Very good. Fong Bujue's tone was like a teacher evaluating a student who had answered a question correctly. After a slight pause, he said, Where you have been, how long you have stayed, and what you have said, as well as all the movements around you, I know all of them. He concluded, In short, I can kill you now, and then find the diary according to your route of action. No, this. Hill sat on the ground in a daze, and words came out of his mouth incoherently. In fact, if you didn't hide the diary, but carried it with you and used torches and gasoline to threaten me, then I would have been in a difficult position. Feng Bujue continued. Although I can still use electric shocks to disable you, I can't guarantee the safety of the diary. He sighed. But the way things are going now, it couldn't be better. You have placed the diary in a safe place that you can't reach. At this point, Feng Bujue's tone turned dark. I believe you understand now why I, who have been keeping an eye on you, did not use the communicator to stop you when you were hiding the diary. Give me one more chance. At this point, Hill could only admit defeat again. Don't kill me. I'll go get the diary now. There's still time. Huh. Feng Bujue laughed. At this point, do you think I'll still let you get close to the diary? As soon as he said that, Hill immediately began to tear at his suit as if trying to take out the tracker. That's enough. Don't waste your energy. Just as Brother Jew was talking, Hill felt a sharp pain in his back. The electric shock caused him to lie on the ground and twitch for a few seconds. How? How is this possible? Hill gasped in shock when he regained his breath. You must be wondering why you were electrocuted even though I didn't say any trigger words, right? Feng Bujue laughed. Ha! The reason is very simple. In fact, from the beginning, there was no trigger word. What? Hill was confused again. Even my assistant, Musashi Kokuno, Feng Bujue continued. There's no way he could make a chip embedded in the human body that can receive and recognize external specific sound signals in such a short time. Then, Hill still didn't understand. Then why did I get electrocuted every time you said those specific words? Didn't you notice? Every time I said those words, I always put one hand in my pocket or behind my back. Feng Bujue continued. Hill was stunned when he heard that. At this moment, many fragments of memory flashed before his eyes. Do you understand now? Feng Bujue paused for a few seconds before saying, I'm pressing the remote control. You. Hill suddenly felt that he had been fooled. In shock and anger, he couldn't help but swear. You bastard. You are the devil. It seems that you understand now. Brother Jew didn't care about Hill's cursing. He was even a little smug. There is no trigger word at all, and there is no delayed trigger word. I just made up whatever I wanted. Anyway, you will be electrocuted if I want you to be electrocuted. He cleared his throat. So, I want to advise you at this moment. The plan of taking out the tracker and then retrieving the diary as blackmail should be abandoned as soon as possible. Even if the communication is interrupted, I can still electrocute you to death. It's just a matter of moving my fingers. Hearing this, Hill finally despaired. He realized that Mr. F, who looked like a child, was far more terrifying than he had imagined. If there was a game between the two of them, then Mr. F was more than 5 steps ahead of him. No matter what he did or thought, it was all in vain. Okay, Hill simply collapsed on the ground and gave up resistance. If you want to kill me, then kill me. If I wanted to kill you, I could have done it when you were on your way here after hiding the diary. Feng Bujue continued. Why do I have to waste so much time talking to you? Hill was stunned for a moment. Then what do you want? I'm keeping you alive because I still have something for you to do. Feng Bujue replied. Now, if you don't want to die or carry this chip for the rest of your life, then come to the castle quickly. After you come in, stay where you are. The werewolf will come and pick you up. Okay. When Hill heard that there was still a way out, he immediately got up from the ground. I'm coming to the city. Wait, did you just say werewolf? Unlike Hill, who was invited into the castle, Blade and the other two were treated worse. Shortly after they entered the underground water, they found that the road was blocked. Of course, strictly speaking, it was not that the road was blocked. It was just that they did not have the ability to pass through it. After killing 7 to 8 bats and the giant killer fishes, they were faced with a different route. One of the routes led up, but the platform above was very high. There was no place to stand on the water, so it was difficult to get up. The other route led down, and they needed to dive down. However, it was dark underwater, and they had no idea where it led to or how long it would take to reach the surface. After some consideration, they decided to turn back and take the other route outside the red door. Therefore, they spent another 5 minutes to quickly turn back and pass through the white corridor. Once again, they came to the place with the pool. Since they had already swum in the underground water, they did not care about getting wet. They headed straight to the other side of the pool. What awaited them in the pool was a group of mud-colored murlocs. Fortunately, these monsters were not that strong. They were basically at the level where Brother Long could kill them with a shield. Not long after, they swam across the pool and came to the other side of the pool. The terrain on this side of the pool was symmetrical with the route that they took to enter. The three of them jumped back and forth across the two platforms and entered the next space. What surprised them was that there was actually a mini-boss in this space. Even though it was a mini-boss, its presence and size were quite large. Its appearance was a giant green skeleton that only had its upper body and was crawling on the ground. Since it was holding a giant bone club in its right hand, perhaps it was its own leg bone, it could only rely on its left hand to crawl back and forth. Its movement was quite slow. However, its huge size made up for its lack of mobility. Because they were indoors, there wasn't much space for the players to maneuver around. In the limited space, it wasn't easy to dodge the giant pillar-like bone club smashing down. Thankfully, the three players from Blade Edge were experienced in killing monsters. After observing the movement pattern of this mini-boss, they swarmed forward and took advantage of the gap between the monster's attacks to beat it into a pile of bones. If this was any other game, after killing a monster like this, there was an 80% chance that it would drop some equipment. Even if it did not drop any treasure, it would at least give the players some free recovery. However, this was Thriller Paradise. After killing a super strong monster, it was normal that they would get nothing other than skill points. Therefore, after Brother Long and the others defeated the mini-boss, they inspected the body to make sure that there was nothing left before they continued on their way. The few rooms that they entered had more decorations. There were broken metal stairs, colorful floor-to-ceiling windows, beige stone carvings, and brighter candlesticks. Along with the decorations, the types and power of the monsters increased as well. There were fully armored zombies, eyeball monsters that flew in the air, blue crows that bit people, wheels of fire and wind with lion faces on their axes, skeletons that tossed bones, skeletons that wore armor, skeletons that shot arrows, unmanned armor that could toss axes, unmanned armor that could toss large rocks, and so on. In short, there were all kinds of monsters. There were monsters in the sky and on the ground, and they all had different attack methods. Brother Long and the others felt like they were playing some kind of crossover game. The deeper they went, the more powerful the enemies became. And this power was not just a simple increase in life points, but an increase in attack, defense, agility, skill, and intellect. However, since they had come so far, it was impossible for them to leave the city empty-handed. Even if they had to bite the bullet, they had to continue. Chapel. Finally, after passing through layers of obstacles, wading through rivers, jumping over hills, and killing more than 10 monsters, they passed through a white corridor that was sealed by 2 red doors. Then, they heard the system announcement. By then, it had been almost an hour since they entered the city, and the 3 of them had exhausted 1/3 of their stamina points. What is it this time? Could that be the leader of the 9 specters? Looking at a giant burning skull floating toward them, Long Almine, who was sweating profusely, gasped for air. It just looks like it. Tan Lang, who followed behind him, added. The real Soul Snatcher should be much stronger than the boss in this scenario. 7 Kills sighed. Then, as usual, this kind of thing that floats in the air and looks unavoidable. I'll deal with it. Then, he prepared to use my Dao Fist. Just as 7 Kills raised his hand, the burning skull suddenly spoke. Everyone seems to be in good spirits. Oh, this is the first monster that can communicate with us, Brother Long said. But the progress is still slower than I expected. The skull ignored Brother Long and continued. Is it because our bodies have shrunk, so we need to pay more attention to the distribution of stamina points? Once he heard the term shrunk, Tan Lang's expression shifted. He took a step forward and asked loudly, Who are you? Before the man could answer, he blurted out the name that he had guessed in his heart. Fong Bujue? Huh, not bad, the skull said. Of course. I'm not here in person. I'm just using this monster's voice to chat with you through magic. So this is your style. 7 kills glared at the skull. Always hiding in the dark to control something. You can't say that. This morning, I had a fight with you guys in the open, but I was almost beaten to death. Phone Bujua said in a tone that was asking for a beating. After that, I decided to change my strategy. Why don't you just say that you're better at playing dirty? 7 kills said. Since that's your request, fine. Phone Bujua paused and then raised his voice. He used the skull's strange voice to roar. That's right. I'm good at playing dirty. I like to play dirty. Even if I don't want to play dirty, the audience expects me to play dirty. I'm going to play you to death with dirty tricks. Wah! Seeing this, 7 kills' lips twitched. He did not know whether to laugh or cry, and there was a fire burning in his heart. Long Aoming noticed the change in his expression, so he patted his small shoulder and said, You are too young. Look at me. I've never taken the initiative to argue with Brother Feng. Ha! Feng Bujue's villainous laugh lasted for 30 seconds before it stopped. After that, he sighed. Phew. Okay, gentlemen, I wanted to give you some hints about the route, but I've changed my mind. But now I've changed my mind. You guys can continue to play in the city. Who asked me to be so sinister? Wah! Boom! This time, his laughter did not last long, because 7 kills had used his Wadao punch to turn the skull into ashes. Chapter 10:20. Hey, here, look here. 5 o'clock right below. Shortly after Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling flew over the castle, a slightly childish voice drifted over with the wind, calling them a few times. The two of them followed the voice and soon found a boy wearing a charming purple long suit on the balcony at the edge of the tower. At this moment, Feng Bujua was standing on his tiptoes, waving his hands at them while shouting loudly. Seeing this, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling did not speak. They just exchanged glances and reached a consensus. Together, they controlled the magic broom to fly toward the balcony. You two have really kept me waiting for a long time. After they landed, Feng Bujua smiled and said, How did you know we were here? Xiao Ling asked after landing. Did you install surveillance cameras around the castle? As she said this, she inadvertently turned her head to look at the castle's outer wall. Your whereabouts? Of course, it was Dracula who told me. Feng Bujua replied, As long as a creature with a large body and soul enters the area around the castle, the Count will be able to sense it. As he said this, he raised his hand and pointed upwards. By the way, the outer layer of the castle is enchanted, and there are 2 layers. Just now, I asked the Count to let you in. That's why you could fly in. Otherwise, you would have hit the energy wall. You already know about Xiao Tan's situation, right? At this time, Ruo Yu said again. Of course. Feng Bujua replied, but it's really a bit surprising. Could it be that he died together with Pejuan? He was killed by me. Xiao Ling continued. Huh? Feng Bujua was stunned when he heard this. What is this? You can ask him yourself after the game. Until now, Xiao Ling was still a little unhappy when talking about this matter. Anyway, let's exchange information first. Oh, okay. Feng Bujua was very good at reading people's expressions, so he did not pursue the matter. Instead, he turned around and said, Then let's talk as we walk. On the other side of the story, the members of Blade. After walking around the spacious chapel for a while, the 3 of them found a vertical, cylindrical passage. The diameter of the passage was about 3 meters. There were many small platforms of different heights embedded in the circular wall. Each platform was about 1 meter square, just enough for an adult to stand on. Going up this cylindrical passage, they could turn to the top of the chapel, where there was a staircase leading to the attic. Brother Long and the rest went in to take a look. Other than the unmanned armor that threw the boomerangs, there was also a strange monster that had 6 arms and the body of a human woman. There were also some fire-breathing monsters that looked like dinosaur skulls that were fixed to the ground. After clearing these monsters, they searched the area. SSSS. They found S's. They found a piece. Unfortunately, it was only a normal grade sword. It was slightly better than the normal grade items in the exchange, but that was it. Therefore, The three of them went back with the mentality that something is better than nothing. Fortunately, they did not have to go too far this time, and the route was all the way down, so it did not take much energy. After returning to the cylindrical passage, they cleared out another small demon and went around a slow, floating monster that looked like a will-o'-the-wisp. Then, they entered the space directly below the chapel. It was a symmetrical hourglass-shaped room made up of many rectangular platforms. When the three members of Blade Edge entered, a small boss had been waiting for them for a long time. This time, the small boss was a manticore monster that was 5 meters long and 2.5 meters tall. Whether it was its HP, speed, or attack style, it was slightly stronger than the giant skeleton with the club. Of course, it was only slightly. The monster's attack style was relatively simple. There were 3 types. 1. It used its python-like scorpion tail to stab or whip the players. 2. It spat long-range fireballs at the players from its mouth. 3. It pounced on the players and bit them. To the members of Blades, this second mini-boss was even easier than the previous skeleton boss. This was because Brother Dragon could tank all of its attacks without breaking through its defense. Therefore, after a quick test, Brother Dragon raised his shield and charged forward. No matter how the manticore monster attacked, Brother Dragon would not lose any HP. He would only lose some stamina points. Just like that, under Brother Dragon's protection, 7 kills and Greedy Wolf dealt damage at a constant rate. They took their time to kill the small boss. There's still no reward. After the manticore monster died, Brother Dragon walked to its body and looked down. It doesn't look like there's any hint. 7 kills said. As for Greedy Wolf, he was silent, deep in thought. 5 minutes later, the three finished a simple search and rested up. They continued on their journey. Due to Brother Jew's random, willful, and unhappy decision, their journey was destined to be long. In the next 15 minutes, the three passed through several rooms. Thankfully, they did not run into too many forks in the road. 15 minutes later, they finally saw another red door. This time, after they passed through the white corridor between the 2 red doors, the system announcement that entered their ears was Demon City Book Collection Vault. Beep! The moment the system announcement rang, Greedy Wolf slapped his thigh and cursed. I knew it. It's right beside my mouth, but I just can't remember it. So this is Demon City. Actually, along the way, Greedy Wolf had already noticed the setting of this castle, but there was a layer of paper between them, and he could not point it out no matter what. This feeling was probably something that many people had experienced before. When you were thinking about a question, you knew the answer was in your mind, but you just couldn't remember it no matter how hard you tried. That feeling was very uncomfortable. Feng Bujue had experienced this kind of discomfort before. Because he was extremely annoyed by this kind of feeling, he had built himself the Mind Palace and the Memory Attic to permanently solve the problem of storing and accessing information in his brain. Demon City, that seems to be the name of an old game, right? Seeing Greedy Wolf's reaction, 7 Kills pondered and said, "It's a game series that has been around since the 1980s. Tanlang sorted out his thoughts and began to explain. There are many works, and their standards vary. Most of them are above a certain standard, but the remaining small number of works are especially godly, and those that are ***. He paused for a second before continuing. After the hundreds of this century, the number of works related to Demon Citadel decreased significantly and gradually faded out of people's sight. After that, neural connection technology gradually became more common, and standalone games showed an overall trend of decline. So people of our generation basically haven't played this series." He looked at 7 Kills and said, "Most people in the 2000s have the same reaction as you when they hear the words Demon City. They know that this is an old game, but other than the name, they have almost no idea." "You've said so much." Brother Dragon interrupted. "Looks like you're quite familiar with this Demon City." Unexpectedly, Greedy Wolf replied, "No, I'm not very familiar with it." Hey. 7 Kills narrowed his eyes. "Then what you said earlier was nonsense." "How is that possible?" Greedy Wolf said, "Although I'm not very familiar with it, I know more than you guys." He paused and then explained, A few years ago, I once found an antique game console online, and the seller gave me all his game discs. So, I played a few games, and one of them was Demon City. He looked at the space in front of him. After coming to this castle, I kept feeling that the monsters and area names here were all kinds of familiar, but because it's been too long, I couldn't remember it. He sighed. Until now, when I heard Demon City's book collection vault, it finally dawned on me. Oh, 7 kills said. Since you have some understanding of the setting, does that mean our next exploration will be easier? That depends on. As Greedy Wolf spoke, he reached into his backpack and took out the treasure map drawn on the craft paper and opened it in front of his teammates. This, at the same time, at the top of Demon City, between the thrones. Let me briefly introduce. Fong Bujua gestured to his 2 teammates with his hand and said to the monsters and Hill in the room, "These 2 are my companions, Rain like Rain and Laughing Soul." He did not know how the system would translate these 2 IDs, but he said it as usual. And these. Brother Jew turned to look at his teammates again. As I told you on the way here, they are Count Dracula, Frankenstein, Mr. Werewolf, the Nameless Mummy, Mr. Gilman, and Mr. Hill. Fong Bujua had also told his teammates about Hill. In short, he randomly grabbed a homeless man with all 4 limbs on the street, and then used Musashi's invention to control him. Next, he set up a trap and let Hill keep Van Helsing's diary for him without knowing it. So, we know each other now. Fong Bujua continued. Next, I'll get to the point. He glanced at Dracula and said, "Earlier today, Count Dracula and I have reached an agreement. At present, both of us are working together for each other's goals. And our goals are 2 in total." He paused. The first is to kill the 3 members of Blades. Long Almine, 7 kills, and Greedy Wolf. He pointed at the crystal ball in the corner of the room. Their every move in the city is under our surveillance. At this stage, we can let them jump around for a while and try to use this city to wear down their life and stamina. At this point, he changed the topic. The second is to destroy the holy amulet. Then, he took out the item from his pocket and raised it. "This is the thing in my hand." He swung the item twice. However, it is still in an indestructible state, and this state will continue until midnight today. "Then, what should we do now?" Ruoyu asked. "We still need to split up." When Fong Bujue replied, he had already quietly walked to Ruoyu's side. "First, I want you to take care of the amulet for me." Before he finished, he grabbed Ruoyu's small hand and shoved the amulet into her palm. Seeing this, Dracula's eyes were obviously different, but he still held it in. Due to the properties of the holy amulet, the Count and his friends were unable to interact with it for long periods of time. This is also why he could only keep the amulet in a room far away from him, even though he had already obtained it. As Fong Bujue spoke, he pointed at the bag on Ruoyu's waist. "I have already explained to Count Dracula that before midnight, our dimensional pocket is the best place to keep the amulet. He also knows that if we encounter any mishaps, the amulet will shift to another place." When he said the last 2 sentences, Fong Bujue winked at Ruoyu and Xiaoling. Obviously, he was hinting at something. The teamwork and individual intelligence were there for all to see. The 2 naturally understood what Brother Jew was trying to tell them, to be careful around the Count. As for me, Fong Bujue got a response from his teammates and continued. "I have to leave for a while and go with Mr. Hill to get something." He looked at Hill with a cheeky smile. "Actually, I wanted to go and get that thing myself this morning, but I really couldn't get away. After all, the layout here is more important, so I could only ask Mr. Hill to do it for me." And as expected, he did what I expected him to do. Hill was much more well-behaved at this time. After listening to Brother Jew's sarcasm, he did not even make a sound. He just stood there silently. "The thing you're going to get is Van Helsing's diary, right?" Xiaoling asked. In the conversation not long ago, Xiaoling had already told Brother Jew about the ritual incantation in her hands. Brother Jew also roughly guessed that Xiao Tan and the other children had visited the strange German man. "Yes," Fong Bujue replied. "Based on my knowledge, The following paragraph sounded very different to the NPCs because Brother Jew mentioned a lot of information that went beyond the fourth wall, and the system had to intervene. Of course, the live stream audience would not be affected. The script we are going through is basically based on the plot of the movie Monster Subduing Squad. Brother Jew continued, "As you can see, I have borrowed the strongest influence in this scenario and stood on the side of the powerful villains. I won't list the advantages of this move, but I'll talk about the corresponding hidden dangers. That is, the main characters in the movie, that is, the group of children who call themselves the Demon Subduing Task Force. They rely on the blessing of the protagonist aura and are very likely to come and ruin our plans." He paused for half a second. On the surface, killing them might seem like a good choice, and it won't be that hard for us. But I know that will never happen. It won't work. For example, let's say I'm in the DC universe, and I'm trying to murder one of the major characters in the DC universe. I'm bound to fail. No matter how carefully I prepare, I might be stopped by some accident with a very small probability of happening. This is because, in this universe, the life, death, and fate of every main character is intertwined. They might even affect the cause and effect of the whole universe. If we, as travelers from another world, try to interfere with this cause and effect, it will cause the highest consciousness of the universe to resist. In a serious situation, it is not impossible to be smashed to death by a meteor, and even the system will not be able to save us. At this point, Brother Jew licked his lips and continued. In conclusion, to achieve our goal, we have to take a detour. Using this scenario as an example, we'd better not use too radical a method to stop the group of children. We only need to control the diary. He said so much, but in reality, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling did not fully understand him. They had not watched the movie, and they did not know much about the group of children. The audience who were watching the game were even more confused, but regardless of whether they understood it or not, the feeling that they had was similar. Chapter 10:21. At 8 p.m., inside the Demon City's book collection. Why do I feel like there is some kind of conspiracy behind this? Long Aomin turned to tell Tan Lang as he retreated. "That's enough. I told you not to turn back," Tan Lang replied. "Look, it closed again." At that moment, the three members of Blade Edge were standing inside a corridor that was made from emerald walls. There was not much to say about the path that they had come from. There were monsters that blocked their way, but the path that they intended to take was blocked by a large stone face. The face was orange-red in color, and it had a pair of glowing green eyes. It had a large nose and a mouthful of sharp fangs. Overall, it looked like the face of a demon or a demon. 5 minutes ago, the three of them had arrived before this stone door. They investigated it for a while, but they could not find any clues to open the door. Just as they were about to turn back, they heard the sound of rolling bricks. Rumble, rumble. The three of them whipped their heads around, and they happened to see the face's mouth close. Then, after a few more tests, they finally discovered the rule of this door. When someone got close enough and turned their back on it, it would open its mouth and become a passable state. Therefore, Tan Lang came up with the plan of the three of them walking backward through the door. However, that was undeniably dangerous. If there was some kind of trap behind the door, they would fall for it if they walked backward. I don't think that's a good idea either. 7 Kills added. I'm not afraid of monsters or traps. I'm just afraid that Feng Bujiwe is waiting for us behind the door. That's impossible. Tan Lang shook his head. How can you be so sure? Long Aomin asked. I've noticed that from the beginning. This guy is just wasting time with us, Tan Lang replied. He doesn't plan to destroy us as soon as possible. He's waiting for something. Oh, what do you mean by that? 7 Kills turned to ask. Well, Tan Lang thought about it for several seconds. He organized his words and said, Do you still remember the communication that he had with us through the monster's mouth? Ah, of course I remember, 7 Kills replied with a pained expression. Think about it carefully. Tan Lang's expression was very serious. That was definitely not a whim. It was a very clever psychological induction. He paused for a few seconds, giving his two teammates some time to think. Then, he continued, "First of all, Fong Bujue made us understand that we are always under his surveillance. By extension, he could launch a sneak attack on us at any time." Brother Long and Seven Kills nodded, indicating that they were still following the advisor's train of thought. After that, he used the argument with Seven Kills to improvise and secretly reveal some information to us. He even took the opportunity to mock us. Tan Lang continued, "Although he hid the truth in his words, I think you, like me, had already seen through it at that moment. Those words were meant to anger us, create psychological pressure on us, and make us speed up the exploration in anxiety." "Yeah, isn't that the case?" Brother Long continued. "No." Tan Lang shook his head. Seven Kills, and Brother Long's expression changed immediately. "A double trap." Tan Lang continued and looked at the faces of his two teammates. "Do you understand?" "You mean," Seven Kills said thoughtfully, "his real intention is actually the opposite." "That's right." Tan Lang nodded. "Why don't we think about it again? Let's say that Fong Bujue really wants us to speed up the pace of our exploration. Then what is his purpose for doing so? It is nothing more than making us expend more stamina and life in a hurry, making it easier to kill us." He paused for half a second and then changed the topic. "But what is the actual situation? Since we entered the city until now, we haven't encountered any particularly dangerous obstacles." Tan Lang raised his head and looked around. "Since our actions have been under his surveillance, why didn't he do anything? With his ability, even if he doesn't show up or confront us directly, he has many methods to deal with us. But all he did was pressure us verbally. Isn't that a contradiction?" Hearing this, Brother Long scratched his chin and said, "Based on what you've said, he doesn't want to kill us." "He does, but not now." Tan Lang's face darkened, and he continued, "Based on my observation, Fong Bujue and Phantom Dawn have something in common, and that is, no matter how they arrange things in terms of strategy, from a psychological perspective, they have never treated the enemy on the same level as themselves. To put it simply, they are extremely arrogant." He scoffed. "Humph. Therefore, they have this habit of putting defeating the enemy as the priority and giving way to exploring the scenario." As Tan Lang spoke, he gestured to his two teammates, indicating for them to turn their heads and retreat. At this point, even though Tan Lang had not told them everything, Seven Kills and Long Ao Min could feel his confidence, so they did not question his decision to go through the door first. The three took large steps back and soon passed through the stone face's mouth. From the emerald corridor, they entered a dark brown space. In the end, none of the traps were triggered. They turned around again, and the stone face's mouth did not close. Based on the current scenario, Fong Bujue is playing the same trick again. Several seconds later, Tan Lang continued, "Actually, he doesn't want to face us so soon. No matter what he says, what he's actually doing is avoiding direct contact with us and stalling for time." He paused. "To achieve this goal, he needs our cooperation, so he has come up with this double trap." In other words, from the beginning, he knew that we would be able to see through his words, Seven Kills said. Seven Kills thought as he continued. So he deliberately conveyed a message that was contrary to his true intentions. "Yes," Tan Lang replied. Tan Lang replied, then sighed and continued, "Sigh? To be honest, this guy's talent and psychological inducements makes me, a person who has studied psychology, feel inferior." He took the opportunity to show off and said, when he urged, angered, and pressured us, he knew that we would see through his intentions and then do the opposite, steadily and surely, step by step. And once we did that, we would be playing right into his hands. "I'm almost confused by all of you." Brother Long scratched his head. "In any case, we still need to move fast, right?" "Yes, the faster the better," Tan Lang said. "There's no need to worry about any particularly dangerous situation. Just treat it like we're playing a normal scenario." His eyes shifted, and he said, "If I'm not mistaken, Fong Bujue is probably busy with something else. As long as we move faster, we'll have a chance to disrupt his plan and rhythm. In fact, we might even be able to catch him off guard." Above the dark clouds, Night had fallen. A large-scale thunderstorm that was rarely seen in 100 years had occupied the sky above the city. Most of the civilians chose to stay at home and avoid going out. However, the police, firefighters, paramedics, and military still had to go out to work as usual. At the same time, on a road between Dark Creek Road and the city, a car was driving at a constant speed. There were two people in the car. In the driver's seat was the homeless man, Hill, and in the passenger seat was the 10-year-old version of Fongbujue. Just as they were halfway down the road, a row of neatly arranged headlights appeared in front of them, and they were heading in their direction. "They're finally here." Fongbujue saw this, and then raised his head to look at Hill. "Have you memorized the lines that I taught you?" "Yes, I have," Hill replied nervously. "Relax." Fongbujue used a lazy tone to add, "Just follow my instructions, and you'll be fine. The more nervous you are, the more suspicious you look." "Okay, I'll try my best," Hill said, took a few deep breaths, and adjusted his facial expression. About a minute later, they met the group of cars. When they got closer, they could see that the cars were basically all military jeeps and police cars. There were even a few armored vehicles among them. Obviously, the black beam of light that soared into the sky had attracted considerable attention from the local government. However, in this kind of movie adaptation, the police and military often came later. So, it was not until a few hours later that these troops were assembled and driven to the current location. Naturally, Fongbujue had foreseen this situation. Before they left the castle, he had already discussed their statements with Gil. If they ran into a car that was stopped for questioning, they would be able to get away with it. Sure enough, before Brother Jew's car and the military and police cars met, a police car drove out of the convoy and blocked the opposite lane. Two police officers came out of the car and raised their hands at Brother Jew. He was already mentally prepared. He slowly stopped the car, turned off the engine, and then directly rolled down the window on his side and turned to look at the police officers who came over. "What's going on, police officer?" "Officer," Hill threw out a question before the officer could speak. "This situation is called mind your own business." The police officer in charge of the interrogation leaned over the window next to the driver's seat and responded, "See for yourself. Is this something you should ask?" As he spoke, he used his eyes to signal the armored vehicle that was passing by behind him. "I say, is it related to the black beam of light?" Hill pretended to be curious. "What? Did you see anything, sir?" The police officer's expression immediately became serious. No." Hill shrugged and replied with a rather sincere expression. "My nephew and I were camping by the river in the afternoon. We were fishing. Then we saw a beam of light in the sky." He lowered his voice. "To be honest, I thought the military was doing some experiment. I was so scared that I pulled my nephew and ran away. We didn't even pack up our camping equipment. But I didn't expect. My nephew accidentally fell into the river. This kid can't swim, so it took me a lot of effort to save him. He almost drowned." Okay. The police officer listened to him talk a lot and immediately showed an impatient expression. He rudely interrupted, "Show me your driver's license first." "Okay." Hill heard, nodded, and took out his driver's license from his jacket pocket. After the police officer took the driver's license, he used a flashlight to compare Hill's face with the photo on the driver's license. Because this was a real ID and the holder was Hill himself, there was no problem with it. "Why is your nephew dressed like this?" When the police officer handed the driver's license back to Hill, he glanced into the car and asked Fongbujue, "Didn't I say he fell into the river?" Hill answered smoothly, and his expression was very natural. He couldn't find dry clothes to change into. "I happen to have his clothes for tonight's party in my car, so I'll let him change into them first." "Party?" the police officer asked tentatively. "A Halloween party, sir." Fongbujue turned his head and spoke at this time. He pouted and said with an angry expression of a 10-year-old child, "But I heard that it was canceled. So annoying." He'll look back at his brother Jew and gave him a look of admiration for his superb acting skills. Then he turned his face to the police officer and said, "We just heard the broadcast. It said that all the celebrations were canceled because of the thunderstorm. This child is very disappointed. You know, his clothes are his mother's." "Okay, that's enough." Sir. The police officer had already regarded Hill as a chatterbox. Before the latter could start talking again, he said, "Hurry up and go over there. Remember, leave this area as soon as possible and stay indoors." Okay, sir." Hill eagerly stuck his head out of the car window and greeted the police officer. It seemed that he was very into his role. 2 seconds later, the police officer turned around and walked a few meters away. He spread his hands and shook his head at his partner. It seemed that Hill and Brother Jew's acting was very successful. At this time, the mighty motorcade had already driven past Brother Jew and his partner. Only the police car that stopped to interrogate them hadn't caught up with them yet. About 10 seconds later, Hill restarted the car and drove past the police car. The two police officers had already returned to their car and were about to turn around and follow the motorcade. Just when both parties thought that this was the end of the matter, unexpectedly, coincidentally, the police officer caught a glimpse of Brother Jew's car's license plate. In this state, it was not mandatory to have a license plate on the front of the car, so it could only be on the back of the car. "Hey, wait a minute. That license plate, isn't that the car that was reported lost this morning? *M*. They're escaping. Go after them." The next second, the two police officers reported the situation to their colleagues on their walkie-talkies. They sounded the siren and chased after Brother Jew and his partner. Chapter 10:22. On the road at night, red and blue police lights were flashing and sirens were wailing. Due to the thunderstorm, the police couldn't mobilize helicopters to pursue Fong Bujue and the others, so they could only pursue them on the ground. And this gave the two of them an opportunity to take advantage of. Under the command of Fong Bujue, Hill cleverly broke through several roadblocks set up by the police and successfully drove the car into the city. After arriving at the complex terrain of the city, Brother Jew took advantage of the time gap between the police and the encirclement to abandon the car and escape into the night with Hill. However, leaving the car didn't mean that they were safe. Due to the weather, 98% of the people in the city stayed indoors, and there were almost no cars or pedestrians on the streets. Although Fong Bujue and Hill got out of the car, they were still surrounded by the police. If they were careless, they could still be caught. What should we do now?" Hill panted as he ran, asking Brother Jew what to do. Compared with the homeless man who drank all year round, Fong Bujue's physical fitness was much better. Even though his body had shrunk, he was still not out of breath. "I'm very familiar with the capture tactics of the American police. Under the premise that there are enough police officers, they usually make a pocket and drive the prey into it. Then, they tighten the pocket and take them down in one fell swoop." He replied calmly, "This tactic is very oppressive, and the efficiency and success rate are also good. However, it also has an obvious weakness." What is it?" Hill asked anxiously. Now, Hill was no longer surprised that Brother Jew would say something like that. He only wished that Mr. F could help him escape with his life. In this confrontation, what is the fundamental difference between the police and the criminal? Fong Bujue didn't answer Hill's question. Instead, he threw a question back. Difference? Of course, one is running, and the other is chasing, Hill answered casually. "Oh." Fong Bujue laughed dryly and didn't comment on Hill's answer. He continued, "It's a psychological advantage, Mr. Hill." He glanced at Hill. "Take you as an example. At this moment, you have taken it for granted that you are the running party and the police are the chasing party. Because of this, you were caught. But this is the truth." Hill replied. "Then tell me, why can you only run?" Fong Bujue asked again. "Because they have more people, and they have guns." Hill replied confidently. "Strength in numbers is also relative." Fong Bujue continued, "To be specific, before their pocket tightens, as long as we don't get close to the main force responsible for driving them away, we just need to choose a random direction to move forward. At most, we will encounter 2 police cars, or even 1 police car." He paused. "In other words, it's 2 against 2. "But they have—" Hill was about to emphasize the enemy's military strength when he saw his Brother Jew take out a strange-looking device from his backpack. He immediately changed his words. Ah, what is this? A compound anti-gravity catapult. Fong Bujue reported the name of this item, successfully shocking Hill, an ordinary person whose consciousness was still stuck in the 1980s. This is more powerful than guns, right? Hill asked after looking at it for 2 seconds. Its power is close to the large-caliber artillery of the 19th century, Fong Bujue replied. Hill heard this and gulped. I see. Most thieves can't escape once they are targeted by the police. Fong Bujue continued. On the other hand, thieves often succeed in escaping. The reason, other than the gap in equipment and personal ability, the fundamental reason is their mentality. As he said this, he led Hill through an alley and ran toward the bottom of an overpass. Only when you push down the wall in your mind, you really have the opportunity to climb over the obstacles in reality. A minute later, the two had passed through the bottom of the overpass and came to the door of a second-hand car shop. Screech! In the blink of an eye, a police car suddenly appeared from the side of the alley in front of them. The driver hit the brakes and did a beautiful drift, blocking the road in front of them. The next second, 2 police officers quickly opened the door and got out of the car with the engine still running. They raised their guns and aimed at Brother Jew and Hill. Police! Hands up! Put your hands on your head. Bang! Before one of the police officers could finish his sentence, he was hit by a roadside trash can. The person who launched the trash can was naturally Fong Bujue. He had already reacted the moment the police car rushed out. He used the catapult as fast as he could to catch a bullet that was close at hand. A catapult was different from a gun. As long as the object was large enough, there was no need to aim very accurately. A random shot could hit the target. Seeing that his partner was knocked out by the flying trash can, the other police officer on the other side of the police car quickly ducked down and used the front of the car as a cover. He put his gun on the hood and pointed at Brother Jew. Put down your weapons, or I'll shoot. Put down your weapons, or I'll kill your partner. Fong Bujue was completely unmoved. He turned around and used the catapult to catch another bullet, another trash can. He raised it in front of him and threatened the police officer. The police officer raised his voice a few octaves higher. Kid, I'll say it again. Put down your weapons. Shut the F***CK up. Brother Jew used his 10-year-old body to shout even louder than the police officer. He shouted at the top of his lungs. I'll count to 3. If you don't surrender before I count to 3, the trash can in front of me will hit your unconscious partner at a speed of 300 meters per second. Even if he doesn't die, he'll be disabled for life. Officer, I think you'd better do as he says. Phil had already bent over and hid behind a low wall by the roadside. When he heard the conversation outside, he raised his voice and shouted at the police officer. This kid is capable of doing anything. I advise you not to provoke him. 1. Before Hill finished speaking, Fong Bujue had already started counting. The police officer, hiding behind the police car, was under a lot of pressure. First of all, he still hadn't realized what had just happened. Secondly, even though he had a gun in his hand and aimed at where Brother Jew was standing, he could only see a trash can. Obviously, Fong Bujue had come up with a foolproof plan before he made his move. The trash can that was used as ammunition was floating right before him, and it blocked half of his 10-year-old body. Other than that, since the officer was squatting behind the car to aim, the shooting angle was limited. In conclusion, even if the officer really opened fire, the chance of Brother Jew being hit was minuscule. 2. Fong Bujue quickly counted to 2, not giving the police officer any time to think. Okay, I'll come out. Don't do anything stupid. Under the pressure, the police officer compromised. After he shouted a few words, he raised the gun in his hand, slowly straightened his body, and moved around the back of the police car. Normally, the person who was in control of the situation would try to slow down the person who was under threat to prevent the latter from playing any tricks. But Fong Bujue chose to do it this time. Are you F***king holding back your SH**T? You have 3 seconds to stand up for me. Put the gun on the ground, or I'll shoot. 1. Brother Jew cursed and started counting again. The police officer didn't expect things to turn out this way. He was a little flustered. Okay, calm down, As he spoke, he quickly took 2 steps forward and bent down to put the gun on the ground. He didn't expect bang. The moment he bent down, Brother Jew didn't hesitate to shoot the trash can at him, knocking him out on the ground. When Hill heard the noise and peeked out from behind the wall, Fong Bujue had already walked to the police car and took away the guns on the 2 police officers. Fong Bujue pocketed both guns and turned to tell Hill, "Don't just stand there, come and drive." Hill jogged over and lowered his head to look at the 2 police officers on the ground. "They're not dead, are they?" "They're fine, just fainted. At most, they'll suffer from a mild concussion." Fong Bujue calmly said the scary line. He was not trying to console Hill. He was merely stating the truth. With the normal power of the catapult, attacking a normal person at this distance had a high chance of killing them. But in this scenario, all of Fong Bujue's items, equipment, and skills have been weakened just like his body size, and that had allowed the 2 officers to survive. 3204. 3204, please reply. What's the situation on your side? Over. Just as Brother Jew and Hill got into the police car, the walkie-talkie rang. What do we do now? Hill looked at Brother Jew in panic. They must have reported it through the walkie-talkie before they drove out. Then we'll report it again. Fong Bujue said as he took out the deceitful pocket watch. He placed it next to his lips for a few seconds before speaking into the walkie-talkie. This is 3204. I'm sorry. It was a false alarm. Everything is normal here. Over. When Fong Bujue used the police officer's voice to speak into the walkie-talkie, Hill turned his head woodenly and looked at Brother Jew like he was looking at God. However, he didn't interrupt. His lips twitched as he silently accepted this setting. Roger that. All units, the alarm at 3204 Southwest has been lifted. Over. The reply came through the walkie-talkie. After Fong Bujue heard that, he hung up the walkie-talkie with satisfaction and put away the deceitful pocket watch. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Let's go. Lead the way." At 9:20 p.m., inside the castle. After deciding on the strategy of speeding up the pace, Blade's efficiency increased by leaps and bounds. After killing their way out of the Demon City's book collection vault, they went through the dance hall and fantasy palace, respectively. During this time, they encountered countless monsters of all sizes and a few mini-BOSSES. Of course, for them, this was nothing. Just as Tan Lang said, the difficulty of this process was no more than that of a normal scenario. Tan Lang's deduction was spot on. Fong Bujue was indeed busy with something else, and he didn't plan to eliminate the enemy as soon as possible. With that in mind, the 3 members of Blade were like a hot knife through butter. In the blink of an eye, they reached the Forgotten Courtyard. The monsters are getting stronger and stronger. After killing a giant rooster that could shoot petrifying rays out of its eyes, 7 kills, breathing finally became erratic. And speeding up the pace, objectively speaking, it does consume a lot of stamina, Brother Long added. Don't worry. We've already fought so many matches, Tan Lang said. How many times have we encountered the enemy when we were at full strength? Most of the time, the result was decided within 5 skills. You're right. 7 kills laughed bitterly. In a battle between experts, life and death can be decided in an instant. How come I don't feel that way? Brother Long laughed. I often fight with experts for 300 rounds before the result is decided. Tan Lang laughed. Among the top players, there are very few defensive fighting players like you. It's fine in Thriller Paradise, but if this was another game, with a player like you participating in the competition, the viewing experience would be greatly reduced. While they chatted, they did not stop moving. At this point, another red door appeared before them. When the 3 of them passed through another white corridor, the system notification arrived as expected. Chronometer Tower. Oh, we're here. As soon as he heard the system prompt, Greedy Wolf muttered, I have a deep impression of this map. He paused for a second and recalled, I still remember when I played the Demon Citadel game. Because I died here many times, I wanted to check the strategy guide. It was also when I was checking the strategy guide that I read some related knowledge about the Demon Citadel. Oh, does that mean there are many instant death traps here? Brother Long asked. Are the monsters here especially powerful? 7 Kills asked. That's not it, Tan Lang replied. I only realized later that the reason I kept dying here is because I'm not that good at fighting. TSK. Brother Long and Seven Kills snorted in unison, and they both glanced at their political commissar with condescension. But every qualified political commissar would use this word at the end of their conversation, and Tan Lang was no exception. Based on my observation, we should be able to avoid fighting the boss of the chronometer tower. As he spoke, he took out the treasure map. At that moment, the map that was originally made from scribbles in his hand had many clear geometric shapes, and the outlines that were drawn were the spaces that they had passed through so far. Chapter 10:23. At 10:05 p.m., Fong Bujua had already retrieved Van Helsing's diary under Gil's lead. They had also abandoned the police car that they had snatched earlier. At this moment, they were driving another car that they had stolen from the parking lot toward the castle. At this point, Fong Bujua had successfully excluded all the main characters in the movie from the main plot. The plot of Prison's Gate had nothing to do with them anymore. For him, the next problem was how to break through the police and military blockade and return to the castle. On the other hand, in the castle between the thrones, the piece of paper in Greedy Wolf's hand. Could it be the map of this castle? Xiao Ling looked at the crystal ball and read aloud. After entering the library, their actions sped up. It was around that time that he took out the craft paper for the first time. Ruo, you continued. It looks like he did do something at that point in time and realized the correct way to use that item. At this time, the two of them had been monitoring this place for a long time. From their conversation, they knew that the crystal ball could only monitor the opponent from a visual perspective. As for what the members of Blades were saying, it could not be heard through the crystal ball. It is indeed much faster than expected. In this hour, they have already explored the underground water zone and the underground deep hall. They have also bypassed the purgatory fighting arena and are heading straight for us. Xiao Ling paced a few steps and frowned. As for our captain, let's not talk about whether he can make it back before midnight. Even if he does, it will be a problem for him to break through the troops outside the castle. As they spoke, Xiao Ling had already walked to the window. She stood on her tiptoes and poked her small head out of the window to look outside. She saw that there are dozens of police cars and military jeeps parked on one side of the castle. Although those cars were parked outside the moat and were far away, the row of bright headlights was still quite eye-catching in the dark night. What you said makes sense. Suddenly, Dracula's voice sounded from not far away as he replied. Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling turned their heads and found the Count in the shadows a few meters away. I've been putting up with them for a long time. Mr. Vampire could be said to appear and disappear like a ghost. After Fong Bujua left, he and his minions left the throne room one after another. No one knew what they were busy with. Now, he appeared here like a ghost. Although there's a barrier blocking it, they are blocking the entrance of the castle. It will definitely inconvenience Mr. F, Dracula said. I think, let me deal with it. Deal with them. Ruo Yu's expression changed slightly. You mean to kill them all? We don't have to kill them all, Dracula said. Just kill them all until they lose the will to fight. Are you sure you can do it? Ruo Yu continued. In the past 100 years, the development of human military technology has been more rapid than the past 1,000 years. They have heavy firepower weapons in their hands that you have never seen before. Humph! Dracula snorted coldly. Thank you for your reminder, but you are obviously overthinking it. He replied confidently. Even if I am in purgatory, I can still see things in this world. This line explained why he could drive, why he knew that the anti-UV film could block the sun, and why he could tell that the old house was the old site of his castle, and other illogical situations. Dealing with those people outside is a piece of cake for me. After saying this, Dracula levitated on the spot and turned into a bat with a wisp of green smoke. Then, he flew out of the window directly. After he flew away, Spirity spoke again. This Count seems to really treat the leader as an ally. She shook her head and sighed. Sigh, it's a pity that the side mission has destined us to betray him. Sho, keep your voice down. Ruo Yu heard her and immediately made a shushing gesture at Xiao Ling. Be careful. The walls have ears. At the same time, at the top level of Demon Castle. Phew! They sure are hard to deal with. Long Almin sighed in relief after using his shield to hammer a large demonic monster to death. Not far away, 7 Kills and Greedy Wolf worked together to kill a white-haired succubus with strange wings on its back. It looked like they had exhausted quite a bit of their stamina as well. Huh, I didn't think it would still take so long even after I sped up the pace. Greedy Wolf panted heavily. But this should be the last area. As he spoke, he took out the map and looked at it. There's no other place to explore. According to my memory of playing Hellion Citadel, the room in the middle of Hellion Citadel's highest level is where the boss is. Speaking of the boss, 7 Kills added, do you think we'll run into the Demon King Dracula mentioned in the introductory cinematic? Or Feng Bujue? Well, Greedy Wolf had already adjusted his breathing in those few seconds. From how I see it, the chance of both is very high. Other than that, don't forget that other than Feng Bujue, there are 3 other people in Underworld Frontline. The members of Blade still don't know about Shao Tan's death. Then, aren't they going to die? Brother Long was a straightforward person, and he did not like to beat around the bush. He asked a direct question. That might not be the case, Greedy Wolf replied. I've explained the reason before. Currently, Feng Bujue's focus is not on us. This is our chance. Based on what you're saying, could it be, 7 Kills said casually, that when we reach the last room, we will run into Feng Bujue fighting the boss? Yes, that's what I'm betting on. To his surprise, Greedy Wolf nodded. Why don't we review the overall situation? First, at the start of the game, the sudden system setting was quite advantageous for us. That was until defeating armies and I were tricked by the enemy, and we were almost killed by the Blood Corpse God. From then on, we were at a disadvantage. Then, when the 3 of us met up, Feng Bujue had basically finished borrowing the power. Then, from the evening until now, we've been exploring and fighting nonstop, and the people from Underworld Frontline are nowhere to be seen. As he spoke, he started to move forward. At the same time, he signaled for his teammates to follow. Overall, Underworld Frontline is 1 step ahead of us in all aspects, but this lead has to come with a price. For example, killing defeating armies, the Blood Corpse God is the price. Then for borrowing power, to borrow the strongest power of a scenario boss, one has to hand over some kind of material or complete some kind of event. And Feng Bujue is so much ahead of us in terms of time, that is illogical. Therefore, my speculation is that the power he borrowed is not really reliable, and there has to be some kind of hidden danger behind it. Then what if you're wrong? 7 Kills' expression shifted slightly, and he said in a low voice, what if Feng Bujue really has that ability to obtain such a huge advantage with such unreasonable efficiency? Huh! Before Greedy Wolf could answer, Long Almin laughed openly. Do you still need to ask? If that's the case, then we can only... Whoosh! Suddenly, a strange sound interrupted Brother Long's words. At that moment, it was too late. Following the sound, a transparent ray shot through the air and aimed right at Greedy Wolf's heart. Seeing this, Long Almin activated the skill, Guardian Charge, and instantly stood before his teammates to protect them. At that moment, if he wanted to save a skill, he might have to pay a heavy price. A player at Brother Long's level would not make that kind of mistake. The next second, Orahalgan's shield glowed, and the ray that hit the shield dissipated. Long Almin and Greedy Wolf, who stood behind the shield, were unharmed. Oh, that was dangerous, Long Almin said after he pulled back his skill. He launched such a deadly attack without warning. Brother Long said that because he knew very well that the ray that hit the shield was powerful enough to kill Greedy Wolf instantly. The ray might not have caused any damage, but in terms of damage, it was no weaker than a special bullet fired from a sniper rifle. The reason it was blocked perfectly was undoubtedly due to Long Almin's ability. To be more specific, Brother Long not only used the defensive effect of Guardian Charge, he also used the 2 special effects of Orahalgan's shield. First of all, with the help of Orichalcum's enchantment, he converted the thrust and penetration of the ray into vibration and distributed the force to the entire shield. Second, the ray triggered Orichalcum Toritos, which had a 300% defense effect against magic and all flying items. In other words, with an active skill, a passive effect, and a trigger effect, Brother Long was able to complete this perfect defense. It looked like a simple defense, but it was actually a skill that only a top player could pull off. You're overthinking it. 7 Kills, who was several meters away, heard Brother Long's words and added with a smile, "Do you think he's the type to greet us?" Then, he turned to face the enemy and got into a battle stance. At that moment, Long Almine and Greedy Wolf poked their heads out from the side and above the shield respectively to look in the direction of the ray. From their perspective, the thing standing there was a fish spirit that was covered in crocodile armor and had a face that looked like Murky. Hey! When Brother Long saw the monster, his expression shifted. That ray earlier, it couldn't have been its saliva, right? The reason he asked that was because he had studied the monster from head to toe. He did not see any weapon that could be used for long-range attacks. So, he could only assume that the monster used its body to launch the ray. Whoosh! 2 seconds later, the Gillman used its action to answer Brother Long's question. It pouted its fish mouth and shot out another transparent ray. This time, its target was 7 Kills. Huh! Stop dreaming. 7 Kills dodged the attack easily and yelled, "With this kind of speed, even if I'm a child, I can still dodge it." Right then, Greedy Wolf, who was hiding behind Brother Long, suddenly turned to shout at 7 Kills. 7 Kills? I'll leave it to you. Huh? 7 Kills was startled. What do you mean by leave it to me? This is obviously a mini-boss, and you want me to deal with it alone? As he spoke, the Gillman fired 2 more rays at 7 Kills. 7 Kills continued to talk as he dodged the attacks. "Because Brother Long and I are very busy here." When Greedy Wolf replied, he had already turned to run back, and his target was a mummy that was slowly approaching them from behind. Then, 1 second later, Brother Long raised his head to look at a chandelier. At that moment, on the chain of the chandelier, there was a muscular werewolf. "So, you're my opponent?" "Ayo!" The werewolf replied to Brother Long with a howl and leaped from the air. "Humph!" Long Almine's lips curled into a smile. He raised his shield and swung his arm. "You're throwing an egg at a rock." After he finished speaking, he used the Shield Bash skill. Name: Shield Bash, skill card property. Active, permanent, skill type. Fighting effect: swing your shield and bash your enemy. Can only be activated if you have shield-type weapon. Cooldown of 20 minutes. All defense provided by equipment will increase the damage of Shield Bash. Consumption: 600 stamina points. Learning requirement: Fighting Mastery Embark. The most common core damage skill used by Azeroth defenders. It combines both attack and defense. It is reliable and will attract a lot of aggro after attacking. Duong, the werewolf, fell from the sky and was unable to change direction in midair. Therefore, he was bashed by Brother Long. The stamina points used for this attack might not be high, but it was incredibly powerful. This was especially true for a man like Brother Long, who was as tough as an iron wall. The damage from that bash was even worse than Brother Jew's flying dragon fist. The werewolf's physique was already quite large, but after being bashed by Brother Long's 7-meter-tall child, the werewolf was sent flying for about 8 meters. He slammed into the wall with a loud boom, creating a large dent in the thick gray stone wall. However, after a few seconds, the werewolf quickly climbed out from the wall and regained his balance. Good. This is what makes it interesting. Facing a strong enemy, Brother Long's fighting spirit rose, and he could not help but reveal a look of excitement. On the other side, Greed had already arrived in front of the mummy. His weapon was a stone hammer. It looked as simple as a store-bought hammer, but its quality was legendary. Since you're already a mummy, you should be lying in a museum for children to learn from. It's not right for you to wander about. When Greedy Wolf attacked, he did not forget to educate the mummy. Let me hand you over to the country. Chapter 1024. It was 11:03 in the evening. As it was almost midnight, Fong Bujue didn't have much time to waste on the road, so he asked Hill to drive straight to the castle and wait for the troops to intercept them. Unexpectedly, when they were less than 2 kilometers away from the castle, they ran into dozens of soldiers and police officers who were running for their lives. These people looked terrified and stumbled. Some of them were injured, and some of them were covered in blood and internal organs. Seeing this, Fong Bujue quickly deduced what had happened. He sneered and said, "Looks like the Earl has solved the problem of the encirclement for us." Then he turned to Hill and said, "Step on the gas pedal and rush over before they react." "Understood," Hill replied, and immediately did as he was told. At this time, the group of policemen and soldiers who had escaped from the castle were all in a daze. Their legs were weak, and some of them were retching. Their means of transportation had been destroyed, and many of them had even lost their weapons. When they saw a car coming towards them, only a few of them reacted and waved at Brother Jew to stop. However, under Brother Jew's instructions, Hill ignored all of these attempts to stop them. He stepped on the gas pedal and quickly left the crowd behind. "Excellent," Fong Bujue continued. "Mr. Hill, you did well. Your mission is basically complete." At this point, Brother Jew reached his hand into his inventory and took out his compound anti-gravity gun launcher. Don't kill me." At the same time, Hill saw Brother Jew's hand movement from the corner of his eye. He was so scared that he started begging for mercy. "Why are you so scared?" Fong Bujue said calmly. "Why do you think I'm going to kill you?" "Don't play dumb," Hill replied excitedly. "I've seen this kind of plot many times in movies. When they say your mission is complete, the subtext is you're useless now. You're just like those murderers in the movies, pulling out your weapon as you speak." Fong Bujue laughed. "What do you think I am? A madman who kills people like flies?" After this question was asked, Hill did not dare to answer. Anyway, in his heart, he had already given a definite answer. "Indeed, for the past 10 hours or so, I have been threatening you with your life." Brother Jew waited for a few seconds before continuing, but whether or not to silence them after the deed is done, that requires a motive. He shrugged and continued. "Most of the time, it's to eliminate witnesses or to deny payment, but I have no intention of doing that at all. On the contrary, I'm happy to fulfill my initial promise to let you live." "You?" Hill hesitated for 2 seconds and mustered up the courage to ask, "Aren't you afraid that I'll tell others what happened today?" "So what if you tell others?" Fong Bujue said. "Do you think it will affect me in any way?" He tilted his head and cast a meaningful look at Hill. "Besides, how can you be sure that your act of telling others what happened today is not part of my plan?" His words were actually a little mystifying, but when used on Hill, it was very effective. Okay, Hill did not continue to discuss this issue with Brother Jew. For him, he should thank God for being able to survive today. "Then, how are you going to deal with the chip on my back?" "You don't have to deal with it," Fong Bujue replied. "That thing exists in the human body for a limited time. After a few days, it will dissolve and be metabolized by you. At most, it will cause diarrhea or constipation." "What? So I can just ignore it?" Hill was shocked. What do you think?" Fong Bujue said, "Although this chip is a product of the combination of magic and super technology, it is only a temporary device that took 10 minutes to make. Even its power comes from the bioelectricity generated by your own movement and the energy brought about by your emotional fluctuations. Otherwise, how do you think something the size of a fingernail can maintain its operation?" "That is to say," Hill said, "in fact, when I'm away from you, I only need to find a place to sit down and stay calm. The chip will soon automatically fail." "Yes, Mr. Hill, that's what happened," Fong Bujue replied. Ha ha. Hill laughed. It had been a long time since he laughed. "If I had known this, I would have run away in the afternoon. In fact, if you had taken Van Helsing's diary back a few hours ago and handed it to me obediently, your mission today could have ended early." Fong Bujue continued. "However, you still chose to deal with me as I expected." So, people like you who are neither smart nor stupid are really a headache." At this point, the car had arrived at the suspension bridge at the main entrance of the castle. Hill slowly stopped the car, and Fong Bujua also unfastened his seatbelt and prepared to get out of the car. "Hey, you forgot something." When Hill turned his head, he found that Fong Bujua had left the catapult on the seat. "I'll give that to you." Brother Bujua stepped out of the car and replied, "You'd better keep it safe because you'll need it soon." Hill still wanted to ask why, but Fong Bujua had already walked forward and crossed the moat without looking back. In fact, Brother Ju's words did come true in the near future. 3 days after the incident, Hill was found and arrested by the military. At that time, the chip in his body had disappeared, and his testimony was not very credible. So, this catapult, which was far more advanced than the level of technology on this planet, became the only evidence that Hill was coerced into committing the crime. It was not until then that Hill realized the reason why Mr. F had left this item in the car. As Brother Ju had repeatedly emphasized and promised, as long as Hill listened to instructions obediently, he could live after the mission was completed. Fong Bujua did what he said, even if the price was a piece of equipment without any return. Brother Ju was such a contradictory person. Sometimes, he would be so meticulous in his calculations that he would not give anything away. Sometimes, he would be so stingy that he would be willing to act shamelessly. But at other times, he would be so stubborn that he would do something that would not be worth it because of a word or a thought. He would not care about the price that he had to pay. Chapter 1025. About 20 minutes ago, on the top floor of the Demon Castle. At that moment, the battle between the Three Blades players and Dracula's 3 subordinates had reached its climax. This was because 7 Kills, Tam Lang, and Long Almin had not seen the movie before, so they had no idea how the monsters in the movie were killed. If they knew, perhaps the battle would have ended very quickly. Now, let me explain the characteristics and weaknesses of the monsters in the movie. First, there was the vampire, Dracula. In the original movie, other than the ability to fly and transform into a bat, the Count also had the ability of bullet immunity. To be more specific, if you hit him with bullets, they would not cause any damage. The bullets would pass through his body like air and hit the object behind him. Other than that, Dracula's fighting ability was very strong. He could move forward calmly when he was being held by a grown man. He could knock a grown man away with one hand. He could shoot out strange beams from his palms. He could even use detonators to attack. Yes, you did not see it wrong. It was a detonator attack. Perhaps the Count majored in goblin engineering. In any case, in the movie, he attacked more than once by throwing detonators. He even used this method to deliver a bento to a black police officer, the one who was investigating the museum theft case. Although we all know that black people usually die in monster movies, but a black person who was killed in a car by a vampire's detonator. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Just the description of this incident makes me feel very uncomfortable. Second, there was the werewolf. In the movie, the human side of the werewolf was actually a good person. From the fact that he went to the police station to ask for his arrest, it was clear that he had no intention of harming anyone in his human form. But in his werewolf form, he became Dracula's loyal minion. He was a cold-blooded beast who would not even let a child go. His violent personality, powerful physique, and amazing self-healing ability allowed him to recover after being blown into pieces. These made him the second main force of the monster team. In the movie, the werewolf's death was rather unjust. It could basically be said that he was killed by the halo of the protagonist team. Even though his body could be recovered after being blown up by a bomb, he was killed by a young man named Rudy from the special squad of exorcists with a silver bullet. It can only be said that this was fate. Next, he looked at the Gill Man. This guy had very few scenes, but from the limited appearances, it could be seen that its strength was very amazing. It also had the ability to breathe underwater. Every time it appeared, it was either in the swamp or in the sewers. At the end of the movie, it was shot in the heart by Horus and died. Overall, it felt like killing it was not much different from killing a normal human. However, in the current scenario, it had shown the ability to shoot high-pressure liquid bullets from its mouth and its body was covered in a layer of crocodile armor and sticky liquid that provided excellent close combat defense. Therefore, it could be considered the third monster in the monster group. Next up was mummies. Compared to the Gill people, this fellow was even more pitiful. From his performance in the movie, his strength was roughly equivalent to a zombie wrapped in bandages. And this was the best way to put it. In fact, this guy's speed was slower than zombies, and he didn't have any outstanding strength. He didn't even have any superpowers. But the saddest thing was the way he died. In the second half of the movie, the mummy climbed onto the main character's team's car. As a result, one end of the bandage on his body was pulled off, tied to an arrow, and shot out. Then, he was pulled off like a sweater that had its stitches removed. A few seconds later, the mummy became a long bandage that was pulled into a long string, a handful of ashes, and a mummy skull. Of course, in this scenario, this monster had been buffed as well. The attack and defense buff made up for his lack of speed. Even though his weakness was still the same, Tan Lang did not know that he could be killed by pulling out the bandage, so he could be considered a small boss that was hard to deal with. Finally, let's talk about Frankenstein. The reason he was placed last was not because he was the weakest. In fact, in terms of combat ability, Frankenstein was second only to Dracula and was even stronger than the werewolf. But this Frankenstein had a similar problem to the werewolf. He was a good person, even though he looked strange and ugly. He had a kind heart and did not like to hurt others. Similar to the setting of the original, in this case, the original 1818 Frankenstein novel. He was just a tragic character who was forced to come to this world, but was rejected and hostile by this world because of his appearance. In the movie, Dracula sent him to kill the children of the special unit of monster slayers. But in the end, Frankenstein stood on the children's side. He helped them defeat Dracula and voluntarily enter the prison door. In this scenario, Fong Bujue, who had seen the original movie, had already spoken to Dracula to prevent this from happening. This time, the Count did not give Frankenstein any mission to prevent him from betraying them. That was the information about the 5 main monsters in special unit of monster slayers. When it came to the actual combat stage, 3 of the monsters caused the members of Blade Edge to be in a tough battle. If this was any other time, the members of Blades would have been able to defeat these 3 mini-bosses with brute force. However, at this moment, their bodies had returned to the level of a 10-year-old. Other than Brother Dragon, 7 Kills and Greedy Wolf's combat power had decreased significantly. Without knowing the strategy, these monsters were not easy to deal with. TSK. They have their own armor and are slippery. I can't even follow up with a combo. 7 Kills circled the Gill Man for a long time. His life points did not decrease, and he had the upper hand, but he could not defeat the enemy. Seeing his stamina points slowly depleting, he started to get agitated. "I'm having trouble as well," Tan Lang replied from afar. "This dumpling has an impossibly high defense. I feel like I've been attacking it for a long time, but I still can't break its defense." At that moment, he also looked like he was suppressing the monster, but the problem was his attacks did not do much damage. "You two should be thankful," Brother Long added. "You just can't break its defense. My monster has an unlimited respawn rate." When he said that, Brother Long had already knocked the werewolf to the ground multiple times. He even smashed it into meat paste, but the werewolf could recover every time. This kind of enemy, with amazing self-healing, was Long Almin's nemesis. For a defensive player like Brother Long, what they lacked the most was explosive skills. Without knowing the setting of Silver Bullet, to use brute force to defeat this werewolf, one had to have a skill that could blow the target into smithereens, but Brother Long did not have that kind of skill. Several seconds later, Tan Lang said, "Now that things have come to this, I have a suggestion." "All right, you don't need to say anything," 7 Kills said. "I was thinking the same thing." Brother Long added, "I also think it's suitable to use that now." "Then let's do it." Tan Lang's expression turned serious. Combo skill. Chapter 1026. Time returned to the present. At 11:12 a.m., Fong Bujue had returned to the throne room. Actually, it was easy to get to the room. For example, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling had flown up on their magic brooms. Feng Bujue had used his Jeppo to jump up from the outside of the castle. Of course, there was a prerequisite to using this method to get in, and that was Dracula had let them in. Brother Ju had mentioned before that the castle was covered with 2 layers of enchantments. To be specific, the outer enchantment was in the shape of a dome, covering the moat, while the inner enchantment covered the outer walls of the castle like a layer of protective film. Blade's trio did not come into contact with the outer enchantment, because when the old house was transformed into the castle, they were already inside the enchantment. As for the inner enchantment, they did not try to invade the castle through the windows. Instead, they walked through the main door, so they did not encounter it. "Yo, I'm back." When Feng Bujue jumped in through the window, he greeted Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling. "How's the surveillance going?" 2 minutes ago, Brother Long and the others successfully lured the werewolf, Gillman, and Mummy to one place. They then used a super powerful combination skill. Xiao Ling replied, "We don't know the exact effect of the skill." Ruo Yu took over the conversation and said, "Anyway, from the feedback from the crystal ball, they blasted a data hole in the map. The 3 monsters are probably dead." "Oh," Feng Bujue nodded. "What about the count? I'm here." Before Brother Ju could finish his sentence, Dracula's voice came from above. Feng Bujue looked up and saw an upside-down bat hanging in the corner of the ceiling. Your 3 generals have been killed. Aren't you going to take control of the situation?" Feng Bujue looked at the bat and asked with a smile. "It's all right," Dracula replied as he transformed back into his human form. He slowly floated down and stood still. "Your so-called kill is only temporary. The Dark Clan will not truly die." "Oh? What do you mean?" Feng Bujue asked with great interest. "Could it be that you have the ability to resurrect me on the spot as long as the other party leaves this room and returns?" Brother Ju was obviously mocking the respawn method of the Demonic Citadel series, but Dracula did not know this and did not delve into it. He just replied seriously, "After you humans die, you will become a soul and enter heaven, hell, or wander the world. But after my kind dies, we will enter purgatory." He paused. "For you, death usually represents eternity, and we are eternal to begin with. When our physical bodies in this world are destroyed, our consciousness will return to purgatory, and we will wait there for the next time we come to the world." At this point, he raised one arm and flung the red cloak behind him. "As long as there is darkness in the hearts of the humans in this world, we will continue to resurrect. In fact, many times we are passively summoned to this world. Those evil religions, greedy totalitarian groups, mad scientists, there is no shortage of them in any era." "I see." Feng Bujue listened and smiled. "Simply put, your men were just sent back to the resurrection point, so you don't care?" "I don't understand what you're talking about," Dracula replied. "But I feel you seem to want to send me away." "Huh?" Feng Bujue raised an eyebrow, and his tone changed slightly. "Where did this come from? That is not what I meant at all." "Humph." Dracula looked at Brother Ju and scoffed. "Since you wish to communicate with your friends in private, I will not disturb you." After saying that, he really left. After the Count left the throne, Xiao Ling whispered, "Why do I feel like this man is acting strangely?" She turned to look at Brother Ju. "Could it be that he has seen through our plan?" "That is possible, but it is not high." Feng Bujue replied, "Dracula is not an anomaly, so he will not be able to see our side mission." The side mission that Brother Ju mentioned was no doubt the follow-up to the Underworld Frontlines mission. Find a way to meet up with your teammates. For the same mission, the follow-up to the Blades mission was enter Dracula's castle. By the way, when the Blades came to the desolate city corridor, this mission had been crossed out and changed to explore Dracula's castle. Why didn't I write it then? Obviously, I forgot. Then, looking at the follow-up to the Underworld Frontlines mission, their mission was updated after Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling came to meet Brother Ju. The mission was complete the ritual recorded in Van Helsing's diary and opened the door to Borderland Prison. To be honest, when Feng Bujue saw this mission, he was quite depressed because he had already joined the side of the villains, and the content of this mission was obviously the opposite of his position, so it increased the difficulty of the mission. However, Brother Jew was not the kind of person who would give up when faced with difficulties. He was a man who enjoyed overcoming difficulties. Therefore, on the way back to the throne, during the time that he shared information with his teammates, he had already come up with a plan and strategy, and he tried his best to simplify it for his teammates. After returning to the throne, Brother Jew pretended to chat with the monsters for a while before calling Hill to go find the diary. Actually, in his original plan, he wanted to send a monster to follow Hill to get the diary, but due to the newly refreshed side mission, he changed his mind. To ensure that nothing went wrong, Brother Jew followed Hill himself. In other words, every move that Fong Bujua made in this scenario was both planned and flexible. While he left himself some leeway, he always had the upper hand. Taking a step back, even if Dracula really saw through my intention, Fong Bujua continued. So what? He turned to look at Ruoyu. The amulet is with us. Then he patted his backpack. Van Helsing's diary is with us as well. He then turned to Xiaoling. Even if I don't get the diary back, we still have the phonetic symbols that Xiao Tan copied back. He opened his arms and said in a relaxed tone, the key items that will decide the direction of the plot are all in our hands. The enemy team and the boss are both heavily injured. The three of us are waiting for them to come to an end. There are not many variables in this situation. Xiaoling placed her finger on her lips and thought for a moment before continuing. Even if the worst happens, we only need to give up on the side mission and focus on dealing with Blade. The chance of us losing is indeed very small. Hey, I'm just saying, but you're raising a flag. The next second, Fong Bujua pointed at the crystal ball on the table with a smile. You see, the moment you say that trouble is coming, bang. Before Brother Jew finished, the door between the thrones was pushed open. Standing at the door was a 7-meter-tall figure and 2-meter-tall figures. Without any words or hesitation, Xiaoling took out the MP5 and Chris_Super V from her inventory the moment the door opened. Even in her lowly form, she could use these two light submachine guns freely. For a moment, there was a burst of tut-tut-tut gunshots, and a barrage of bullets mercilessly swept toward the three people at the door. Humph! As expected. Seeing this, Brother Long smiled confidently and raised his shield to block the bullets. 7 kills and Greedy Wolf hid behind Long Aoming at the same time. What's going on? 4 seconds later, Brother Long's expression shifted. My life points are dropping. That's right, he was losing HP. Although he was hiding behind Orcalgen's shield and facing 2 firearms without special effects, his life points were still decreasing at a rate of 2% per second. What the F***CK? Run. After holding on for a few seconds, Long Aoming finally realized what was happening. She has filled the submachine guns with special ammo. After he said that, he and his 2 teammates jumped to the side of the door and left the enemy's line of fire. At the same time, the viewers who were watching the live stream also realized what was going on. You got to be kidding me. Just how rich is she? In less than 10 seconds, she has already spent 3 digits in RMB. I've never heard of someone filling a gun with special ammo. After all, they're sold by the dollar. Could it be that they're self-made? Even if it's not a store-bought product, the cost of the raw materials wouldn't be low, right? The viewers discussed among themselves, and there was a wave of activity in the comments and video. It had been half a year since Thriller Paradise opened, and special ammo was a product that the players were very familiar with. Most players would go to the system store to buy a few fixed types of ammunition. In any case, the store would give you what you paid for, so there was no cheating. As for the more high-end players or players with special needs, they would go to the auction house to buy special ammunition made by others. As mentioned before, many workshops were now relying on these specialized products to make money. There were also some organizations that engaged in reselling or those that had a high demand for ammunition, who would even go to a third-party trading platform to do mass customization wholesale. Of course, no matter who the buyer or user was, there was a common knowledge that everyone knew. That was special ammo should be loaded into guns with slow firing speed, high damage, or special effects. If there was no such condition, one could get a normal sniper rifle to load it with. As for the basis of this common knowledge, for example, if the penetration of a normal bullet fired from a sniper rifle was 10, then the penetration of a submachine gun would only be about 3. In broad terms, it did not include the specific gun type and bullet caliber. When a sniper rifle fired special ammunition, even without any skills or special effects, the penetration of 10 would change to 20, 25, or even higher. But when a submachine gun fired special ammunition, it would only change the penetration of 3 to 6 to 8. In conclusion, under normal circumstances, firing special ammo was not much different from activating a skill. Considering the high price of this kind of ammo, it was a waste to load it into a gun with a high firing speed, low damage, and no special effects. However, Xiaoling's action and thought process went against common sense. Those with a good memory might remember that when Xiaoling challenged Brother Zhu in the matchless martial competition scenario, she had already done that. Now, she had demonstrated her money-burning action of treating special ammo as normal ammo before the audience. It was for no other reason than to be able to deal more damage with each shot. She was that heartless, that rich, and that willful. What's going on? 7 Kills, who rolled one round outside the door, immediately raised his head to ask Brother Long, "Aren't you good at tanking bullets?" "If she really fired special ammo at me, it would have been easier," Long Aomin replied with a frown. "The attack rate of a submachine gun is too fast. I don't even have the time to use orichalcum barrier to convert the power of each bullet, and those bullets are just enough to break through my normal defense. If she tanked me like that, my life points would continue to drop." TSK. If only we had more funds. Tan Lang, who was next to him, heard this and said unhappily, "We would be able to squander like her." He clenched his fist and said fiercely, "When the time comes, I will install 2 TVs in the conference room. One to watch the news, and the other to watch Animal World." "Hey, is that the main point?" 7 Kills was not on the same side as Tan Lang, so he raised his voice. "Political commissar, you have to pull yourself together. I don't know whether to mock you or mock the show you're watching." Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as they were shouting, they saw 2 shadows flash out from the door. At that moment, the 3 from Blade Edge instinctively thought that it was some kind of explosive that flew out, so they all took defensive and retreated stances. But 2 seconds later, they took a closer look and discovered that it was actually 3 people who had flown out. At that moment, Feng Bujue and Ruo Yu were riding on a magic broom, and Xiaoling was riding alone. After the 3 of them flew out from between the thrones, they rushed into the city, completely ignoring the 3 enemy members behind them. "This is bad." 2 seconds later, Tan Lang was the first to react. "Go after them. They're running." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a big stride forward and ran to the front. But, side quest progress update, at that second, the system notification coincidentally rang. The new quest that appeared in the Blade Edge members quest tab was Slay the Devil Dracula. Chapter 10:27. Before the system voice finished speaking, a series of thoughts flashed through Tan Lang's mind. He knew very well that there had to be a trigger condition when the mission was updated. Generally speaking, this condition was either arriving at a certain location, obtaining a certain item, or meeting a certain person. There was also a possibility that he had arrived at a certain point in time. The mission hint that Blade had received matched the aforementioned pattern. Therefore, Tan Lang quickly used the method of elimination. First, when they stepped into the space between the thrones, they did not hear the system announcement, so the change of location was not the trigger condition. Second, they had not obtained any item related to the plot, so obtaining an item was not the trigger condition either. Third, from the perspective of time, at least according to Tan Lang's estimation, they were not at a certain point in time. Therefore, arriving at a certain point in time was not the trigger condition either. In conclusion, the answer was obvious. They had met a certain character that caused the mission to be updated. And from the content of the mission, kill the Demon King Dracula, it was obvious who they had met. Warning, Tan Lang, who was yelling about chasing after the members from Underworld Frontline, suddenly changed his mind in 2 seconds. He stopped moving and turned to yell at his teammates. The Demon King is who? A black gust of wind blew over, causing his words to stop abruptly. When Brother Long and 7 Kills realized what was happening, Dracula had already lifted Tan Lang up by his neck. The 3 of you. The Count held the greedy wolf firmly with one hand. No matter how hard the greedy wolf struggled, the Count remained unmoved. You used Athena's exclamation, the exclamation of Athena, a move where the 3 golden saints pushed the small universe to the limit and concentrated the attack on one point, just now, right? As expected of the final boss of the scenario, this Count Dracula was very knowledgeable. Not only did he recognize Feng Buju as Bayan, he also recognized the combination skill of Blade and the other 2. To be honest, I'm very surprised. Dracula did not wait for the other party's response and continued. I thought you travelers from another world only knew how to use some strange tools. I didn't expect you to have such power. As he spoke, he increased the strength of his hand. Greedy Wolf's slender neck could not withstand the pressure. In a few seconds, his face turned from red to purple as he entered a state of hypoxia. Even if it was me, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to take that move head-on. As Count spoke, he increased his strength again, preparing to end Greed's life. However, as long as you can't gather the 3 of you, I should be able to directly block that move. Boom! Before Count's voice fell, a tremor had already sounded. Long Almine gathered his energy, raised a shield, and fired a reckless tackle at Chungu. With this level of skill, Dracula's expression was indifferent. He raised his other arm and blocked it with one hand. You want to save your companion? In the next second, there was a loud bang as the shield collided with Dracula's palm. Brother Long expected that the boss would not be heavily injured, but he did not expect the Count to stand where he was after receiving the attack. It was like he had caught a cardboard box with his bare hands. Looks like you're much stronger than I thought. Brother Long raised his head and said from behind the shield, "What does your imagination have to do with me?" Dracula's attitude was still as cold as ever. Humph! Brother Long scoffed. Thankfully, we still have a backup plan. Dracula heard that and suddenly realized something, but it was already too late. In that second, 7 Kills had already used his classic combo, shadow steps and shocking bone-piercing punch. The punch penetrated Dracula's lower back and went straight for his spine. Normally, 7 Kills would aim for the middle of his back, but with his current height, that would affect the damage. Even though the damage of the skill was affected by the size of a child, it was still incredibly powerful. Dracula groaned, and his hand that gripped the wolf's neck loosened involuntarily. When Greedy Wolf's neck was released, he only had 2% of his life points left. When he fell to the ground, he almost died from the fall. Thankfully, he still had a skill that could save him from the fall. Name, Lingering at Death's Door skill card attribute. Passive skill, permanent skill type. Medic effect, when you receive fatal damage, the damage from the previous attack will be nullified. Consumption, all current life points, prerequisite. Medic, remark, can only be triggered when your life points are less than or equal to 20%. Can only be triggered once every 10 hours. When Lingering at Death's Door takes effect, the loss of your life points will be calculated as usual, and the overflow damage will be converted into corresponding mental and physical damage. After the calculation is over, your life points will return to 21%. The existence of this skill greatly increased the survival ability of the wolf. Those who had played the medic profession in online games knew that for someone like the wolf who walked the path of a medic, as long as he still had a breath left in him, it would not take long for him to recover his life points to full. And the passive skill Lingering at Death's Door guaranteed that the wolf would have a chance to come back from the dead when his life points were low. In reality, the wolf would only be helpless when he encountered the Blood Corpse God's super fast and super strong attack. If Dracula used the choke method to deal with him, he would be able to survive. But this skill, obviously there was a price to pay. It did not mean that one could easily use one's life points to tank a nuclear bomb. The condition of receiving corresponding mental and physical damage was quite deadly. There should still be people who remembered that Fong Bujue had the experience of his life points returning to zero several times. Even with Brother Ju's endurance, it was a very painful experience. It was not difficult to imagine how much pain one would have to endure when one's life points returned to zero and did not dissipate in a white light. For example, if the wolf used 1% of his life points to tank a skill that would hit 2% of his life points, then he would have to endure the mental impact of the 1% of damage that would be converted into life points. Basically, he would feel dizzy, nauseous, and weak. And if the wolf used 1% of his life points to tank a skill that would hit 20% of his life points, then he would have to endure the mental impact of the 19% of damage that would be converted into life points. That degree of dizziness and nausea might cause severe pain all over his body, as well as neuralgia, so on and so forth. One could imagine what would happen if he really used 1% of his life points to tank a nuclear bomb. Of course, if there was a situation that could cause the player to have a mental breakdown, the system would definitely forcibly disconnect the nerves when the player's life points reached a critical point. The precision of the operation could be precise to many microseconds after the decimal point. It would not let the player become a vegetable while playing the game. 2 seconds later, Dracula, who had his spine broken, let out a groan and said, "So that's how it is? The one with the shield was just trying to distract me." He slowly turned his head around and looked at 7 kills behind him. "You guys did well." At a time like this, he actually praised the players. That was not a good sign. It was similar to when you were playing a card game and the opponent said things like, "Well done" or "Sorry." Usually, something bad would happen. As expected, 1 second later, 7 kills raised his head to glare at Dracula. His expression changed because he realized that his arm was stuck inside the Demon King's torso and could not be pulled back. TSK, what is wrong with this guy? Brother Long also realized the same thing. His shield was sucked into the Demon King's palm. In less than a minute after the Dracula's battle, 2 of the 3 Blades players were restrained by the boss. The last one could barely get up from the ground. Due to the greedy wolf's body being turned into that of a child, the impact of the impact was magnified. He was so dizzy that he couldn't even stand properly. This was the power of the Demon King. Compared to all the previous mini-bosses, he was on a completely different level. Unfortunately, the current you are far from being my match. Dracula's spine had been broken, but he could still move freely. He looked so calm and collected. The groans that he made earlier appeared to be nothing more than a grunt from the pain. Fong Bujue used an item called the Bell of Jin Gang as a sacrifice to complete a sacrificial ritual that no one has succeeded in the past 100 years and successfully summoned my castle to the real world. Phew, he sighed. Now I possess both the physical body of a mortal and the mental power of purgatory. I have never been so powerful before. At this point, the Count's tone changed slightly. And I can see that you, as well as Fong Bujue and the rest, are all restricted by some kind of strange power, and you're not in your best condition. As he spoke, he used the hand that he freed after releasing 7 kills to grab the top of 7 kills' head. Even though you can still use a skill, like Athena's exclamation, that could destroy my physical body. Dracula sighed, but I will not give you that chance like Werewolf and the rest. Ka. Ka ka ka. Immediately after, the sound of a few skulls cracking could be heard in this spacious environment. This fatal injury instantly sent 7 kills back to the login lobby. Tan Lang did not even have the chance to give his teammate a quick bite. When the announcement of his teammate's death rang, Long Aomin's blood rushed to his head, and he screamed. Brother Long was a straightforward person. He was magnanimous, open-minded, loyal, and did not care about gains and losses. He was a person who would take a bullet for someone he did not know. That was why he was injured when he was a police officer. That was why he was recruited by the Special Department of 9 Sections. That was why he was here today. His weapon of choice was a shield. In fact, it could not be called a weapon. A weapon usually meant offense, but his philosophy was defense and protection. This was because the thing that he could not bear to see the most was his teammate dying before his eyes. However, at this time and place, Tan Lang had fallen. 7 kills had died in battle. Long Ao Min watched everything happen, but he could not do anything to stop it. He suddenly felt that the shield that he could not move was so heavy. It was so heavy that he wanted to let go of it, but at the same time, he felt that the shield was so weak that it was as good as nothing. Chi. Just as Dracula raised his hand to lick the blood that stained his fingers, he seemed to hear a surge of energy coming from behind the shield. Very quickly, the Count's palm felt a shocking heat. Startled, he abruptly stopped sucking on the shield. Dracula's expression changed. The calmness disappeared from his face, and in its place was a serious expression. You are hiding such power. At that moment, Brother Long's body burned with orange dragon's chi. A new power had been awakened. Soul's Eye Dragon Knight. I have no idea what this is. Long Ao Min moved the shield away from him and raised his eyes to look at Dracula. At this time, Brother Long's body had become 30% stronger than before. A layer of amber-colored scales had appeared on the surface of his muscles. His eyes had become a pair of crimson gems. I only know. I'm going to kill you. The battle cry rose, and the figure moved. Long Ao Min's every step was like a giant dragon stomping on the ground. A shockwave rippled through the hall, causing it to shake. Duong 1 second later, Brother Long swung his shield at Dracula, who was barely moving. This was one of the skills of the Dragon Knight form, Dragon's Tail Whip. A close-range attack with a shield, dealing heavy damage and stunning the enemy. The Count was quite well-mannered. Half of his body was smashed into meat paste, but all he did was grunt. Humph! In that split second, Dracula thought to himself, even though Feng Buju had told me to try my best to buy time and not kill all of them, in this situation, if I don't do something, I'm afraid I'll be in danger. With that thought in mind, Dracula immediately transformed. A cloud of green smoke rose, and his broken body morphed into a bat and flew away. Seeing this, Long Ao Min put away his shield, bent his knees, and yelled, "You want to run?" A dragon's roar echoed through the air, and a giant flame spread in the shape of a cone. In less than a second, the flame scorched half of the hall's ceiling. This was the second skill of the Dragon Knight form, Dragon's Roar. Using the mouth to spit out dragon's breath, burning all the targets in the cone, including allies. Foolish dragon descended. The bat that Dracula transformed into was not burnt, but there were still traces of the dragon's breath on his body. He replied in the air, "I advise you not to provoke me." Chapter 1028. Hearing Dracula's threat, Long Ao Min was not afraid. He scoffed and said, "I don't have time to care about your emotions." Then he kicked off the ground and leaped into the air. The force from the jump caused Tan Lang, who was standing not far away, to fall back to the ground. Boom! The next second, following another boom, a gust of wind was released from Long Ao Min's body and rushed at Dracula. This was the third skill of Dragon Knight, Soaring Dragon Slash. Unleash a gust of wind that looks like a dragon spreading its wings during the jump, attacking all targets in a straight line, including friendly damage. Humph! Child's play. Dracula scoffed and turned back into his human form from the bat. He flung the cape on his back. Just as the Soaring Dragon Slash was about to hit him, a black pillar of light that was perpendicular to the ground appeared and enveloped Dracula's body. Then, the gust of wind pierced through the light and blasted through the ceiling of the hall. The pillar of light quickly shrank and disappeared from the player's sight along with Dracula. 2 seconds later, the same beam of light appeared in another place more than 10 meters away, sending Dracula back. Phase shift. Tan Lang, who witnessed this skill, immediately pointed out the skill used by the Count. Indeed, the Count used a skill similar to phase shift, and this skill had a very long invincibility time. As long as the pillar of light appeared, even if it did not completely cover his body, he would be seen as having entered the phase space. Any attack that did not have the destructive power of hyperspace would be useless against him. Similarly, when he used the pillar of light to move to another coordinate, before the pillar of light completely disappeared, he would still be invincible. By the way, the cooldown time of the Count's skill was only 6 seconds. For a skill like this, if it was converted into a skill card that could be learned by players, the cooldown time would be at least half an hour. However, the boss had special privileges and was that unreasonable. Of course, this move also had its weaknesses. As long as one understood the rules of this skill, they would be able to see 2 flaws. First, the maximum distance that could be reached with each movement was only 20 meters, and the level of the Count when he appeared did not change. Second, the time that the light pillar appeared and disappeared, as well as the time it took to move, was fixed, and the Count himself would not be able to move before he completely left the light pillar. But Long Almeen and Tan Lang did not have Feng Bujua's ability to observe data, so they could not grasp the pattern of the skill just by looking at it once. In fact, even if they looked at it 4 or 5 times, they could not be 100% sure whether the pattern that they saw was a natural or intentional move by the boss. Therefore, they were unable to break this move for the time being. As the Demon King, after Long Almeen landed on the ground, he stood up straight and looked at Dracula. Being forced to flee by me, isn't that a bit too embarrassing? Brother Long was very excited, but he did not lose his mind. He could see that in terms of mobility, Dracula was much stronger than he was. If the Count ran as fast as he could, no matter how powerful the Dragon Knight form was, it would be useless. So, he used a very simple but often very effective method, provocation. However, Dracula's reaction was, "Your provocation means nothing to me." The Count's tone was calm, and his expression was calm. His body, which had been shattered by the dragon swings its tail, had completely recovered when he transformed back into his bat form. On the contrary, your actions have revealed a lot of unfavorable information about you. As he spoke, he increased the altitude of his hovering body and distanced himself from Brother Dragon. Firstly, your speed can't catch up with me, so you can only provoke me to fight you. Secondly, the dragon breath and wind pressure that you released just now, which are your long-range attacks, you can't use them repeatedly in a short period of time. Thirdly, your current power. I think there's a time limit to it, right? After Dracula said that, before Brother Long could reply, Tan Lang was already cursing internally. Can this boss's intelligence be any higher? His analytical ability is already better than most of the players, right? How is this even possible? Phew! Several seconds later, Long Almeen gave a long sigh. It can't be helped. I have lost. In the blink of an eye, half of his fighting spirit dissipated and 90% of his chi energy was depleted. What? Tan Lang was shocked. He was as shocked as all the viewers who were watching the live stream. Hey, after several hundred chapters, you finally got a chance to play again, and you even dropped a seed, and this is how you're going to end it? Fine, it was not Tan Lang who said that, but I said it on behalf of everyone else. My situation has been seen through, and this guy is not the type to seek death. What else can I do? Long Almeen turned to look at Tan Lang and shrugged. Am I supposed to fly into the sky? That is a very correct judgment. Dracula, who floated in the air, heard that and nodded. Compared to these useless attempts, why don't we? Before he could finish his sentence, his vampire instincts allowed him to capture a trace of a fatal aura. Roar. In that second, another dragon's roar echoed through the air. The surging energy burst out like an explosion, causing the air in the entire space to stagnate. Obviously, Long Almeen did not really surrender when he pulled back his presence. What he said was to make his enemy lower their guard. At this moment, the move he was using required him to hold his breath and focus his mind. He could only activate the dragon's Do Chi in an instant, flying dragon in the sky. The shadow of a dragon appeared, and Brother Dragon soared into the sky like a dragon. He held the orichalcum shield in front of him and charged at Dracula like a missile. The speed and explosive power of this move were definitely not inferior to any S-rank sure-kill moves. Even if he faced Shiva's Eye of Destruction head-on, the result was still unknown. To put it simply, this skill was not something that Dracula could take on. The Count was not the kind of person who would take a fatal blow head-on, but he knew that he would not be able to dodge this attack with phase shift because the energy of flying dragon in the sky showed that it could affect the substance in the phase space to a certain extent. I can't believe I've been forced to this point, Dracula thought to himself. Can I only reveal that form now? But at that moment, something unexpected happened. A giant shadow appeared out of nowhere. It used a speed similar to Long Ao means to jump before Dracula and blocked with all its might. Bang! Half a second later, there was a loud explosion. Orica's shield collided with the giant shadow, causing it to shatter. The shockwave from the collision swept through the hall like a storm. Long Ao mean fell from the air due to the recoil and landed heavily on the ground. After landing on the ground, the Dragon Knight transformation effect quickly faded from his body, and his life points took a huge hit. And Dracula, with the protection of the giant shadow, he was unharmed. Tan Lang had basically recovered from the negative effect of lingering at death's door. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and cast a healing skill on Brother Dragon. He knew they could not afford to waste a second. If Brother Long lay there for another 10 seconds, Dracula would be able to kill both of them. But the Count, who was in the air, did not seem like he was going to chase after them. He floated in the air and looked at the shattered pieces before him. He stood there quietly for 2 seconds. Then the Count moved slightly and reached out to grab one of the pieces. And that piece was Frankenstein's head. Old friend, you don't have to do this. Dracula's expression changed slightly as he held Frankenstein's face in his hands. My companions can do something. I am very happy. The Frankenstein's head squeezed out a few words from its throat, then slowly closed its eyes. Rest in peace, old friend. I believe we will meet again soon. As Dracula said that, he lowered his head to look at the two players on the ground. Then, he did not launch an attack. Instead, he held his friend's head and silently flew away through the gap in the ceiling. Night, 11:55 p.m., at the end of the Forgotten Courtyard. This was the place that led to chaos, and it was also the starting point of the black beam of light that shot out from the castle. From here, one could see the sky, but it was not the sky of the human world. Instead, it was a dark blue sky that was decorated with various strange sceneries. The spacious space was made from purple, blue, and white bricks. There were some Greek pillars and statues around it, and they were surrounded by roses and thorns. It was a rather strange combination. Puff, puff. Following the flapping of wings, a bat flew over from afar. Not long after that, he morphed into human form and landed on the ground. Where is Fong Bujua? Dracula looked at the two girls before him and asked coldly. He has something else to do. Ruoyu looked at the Demon King before her with a cold expression and answered calmly. Where is the amulet? Dracula asked again. It is with me. Xiaoling, who stood behind Ruoyu, answered. When she said that, she even picked up the item and showed it to the Count. The Count's eyes scanned their faces. After a moment of silence, he spoke again. You do not plan to destroy it, right? Yes. At this point, there was no need for the players to hide anything anymore, and Ruoyu gave an affirmative answer. You, Dracula turned to Xiaoling. You wish to activate the ritual to open the door to Borderland Prison through a spell, right? That's right, Xiaoling replied. As I expected, Dracula said darkly. Unfortunately, we are unable to fulfill your wish, Ruoyu said calmly. Mr. Dracula, if you want to blame someone, then blame that man called Fong Bujue. At this moment, Xiaoling very mischievously joked with the Count. At any time, when something bad happens to you, you can attribute the problem to 3 places. 1 is the world's fault, 2 is Shi Chen's fault, and 3 is Fong Bujue's fault. Bad? Dracula repeated the word and snorted softly. It seems that you have misunderstood. Once that was said, the expression of the two players shifted. I have already noticed your real purpose, Dracula continued. Dracula continued. Do you really think I can't hear your conversation in the castle? I don't think so. Xiaoling didn't quite believe his words. If you really knew about our plan, Why would you pretend to know nothing and help us? Simple. Dracula shrugged. From the beginning, I did not plan to destroy the amulet. At the same time, on the top floor of the chronometer tower, the gray sky and the huge clock tower formed the background here. On the open gray stone tiles, a short figure in a purple long suit stood with his hands behind his back. His shirt fluttered in the wind, and his soft hair that was not that long was ruffled by the wind. When he heard the footsteps, Fong Bujua lifted his head to look at the clock and said casually, "Gentlemen, you came at the right time." Tan Lang and Long Aomin, who had just walked up the stairs, recognized their brother Ju immediately. "The reason why you purposely waited until midnight to lead us here." Tan Lang took several steps forward and asked, "Can you explain that? Go and watch the recording after the competition." Fong Bujua turned around and replied lightly, "Facing opponents like you, I have to be careful. Revealing the information to you before the dust settles will increase the chance of you turning the tables." "Ha! Such a cruel tactician," Tan Lang said. "But even if you don't tell me, I can make some guesses." He paused for 2 seconds before continuing. "Currently, your teammates are not here. This means that they are busy with something else. Combined with the fact that you forced the competition to midnight, can I assume that your team has received a mission related to the ritual in the introductory cinematic?" "I have no comment." Fong Bujue was unfazed, and he replied to the man with these 4 words. His tone, expression, did not reveal anything. His opponent could not read his mind. "Brother Fong." Then Brother Long spoke. "I will not beat around the bush. Let me be honest with you." He patted his chest. "Both of us are in good condition. Even though our stamina points are not full and our skills have been exhausted, we still have 70% of our combat power." He raised his arm to point at Brother Ju. "You, on the other hand, are at your best. Even if you are not at your best, you are not far from it." "Huh." Brother Long laughed magnanimously. "Brother Fong, what do you think? In this situation, 1 against 2, what are your chances of winning?" "Good question," Fong Bujua said as he waved his hand, and a shiny poker card appeared in his hand. Both Tam Lang and Long Aomi knew that this was death poker, but at that moment, the death poker was different from the ones they had seen before. The cards that were originally glowing with a golden light had turned into a black light. "If you ask me," Brother Ju answered firmly, 100%. Chapter 10:30. On the other hand, at the entrance of the courtyard of Oblivion and the Primal Chaos, after hearing Dracula's answer, Ruaw, you asked again. "You said that you never planned to destroy the amulet from the beginning. Then how do you explain the agreement between you and Fong Bujue?" "It was him who proposed the agreement, not me," Dracula replied. "Fong Bujue naturally thought that I wanted to destroy the amulet, so he came up with that kind of deal." He paused. "Under those circumstances, I went with the flow and agreed to it." His explanation did make sense. When the players entered the scenario, they saw what happened on the night of resurrection a century ago through the introductory cinematic. So, everyone, including Brother Ju, was implanted with the idea that the dark forces wanted to destroy the holy amulet. Then, Xiao Ling turned to the Count to ask, "What is your real goal?" "My goal is not in conflict with yours," Dracula replied. "You want to open the door to purgatory, don't you?" He paused, and before the other could answer, he said, "And I want to close that door forever." "How come I feel like these 2 things contradict each other?" Ruaw, you asked. "No, they do not contradict each other," Dracula said. "If you know the method and the theory behind it, then why don't you explain it to us?" Ruaw, you asked. Dracula thought about it, and then raised his finger to point at the amulet in Xiao Ling's hand. The holy amulet represents the power of light and holiness in the world. Its power ensures that the dark race will never be able to break out of purgatory. He then raised his hand and gestured at the entrance that was surging with energy more than 10 meters away. Chaos symbolizes darkness and depravity. Its power makes my race immortal and indestructible, forever living in purgatory. The Count paused for 2 seconds and looked into the distance. Every century, this world will welcome a special night. You humans call it the night of resurrection. That's because on this night, some of my old friends and I will reappear in this world. To you, it's just like resurrecting, but in reality, we've never died. We've simply been summoned back from the inferno. Since it was summoned, Xiao Ling continued. Then who summoned you? Of course, it's the evil of this world. Dracula replied. The source of power of chaos is the evil of human nature. It is you humans who created the boundless chaos. Therefore, every night of resurrection, the power of darkness will gain the upper hand and summon us from the purgatory, causing the indestructible property of the holy amulet to disappear temporarily. Sigh. At this point, the Count let out a long sigh and continued. This kind of thing repeated over and over again for thousands of years. In an even more ancient era, there was still a group of noble, powerful, and devout vampire hunters among you humans. Their bloodline was passed down from generation to generation, not only on the night of resurrection, but at any moment when darkness descended, they would stand up and confront us head-on. His eyes became a little complicated, as if he was recalling something in the past. But with the change of time, these families declined, and even their bloodline was cut off. Those who came to confront us became pure mortals, such as Van Helsing. He snorted coldly. Humph. I have to admit that although he was not as powerful and devout as those vampire hunters in the past, he was still brave, selfless, indomitable, and admirable. Unfortunately, the power of mortals is ultimately limited. The exorcists of Van Helsing's era had to use some spell from the darkness and the power of some holy objects to send us back to the inferno. Xiao Ling took the opportunity to ask, You're referring to the ritual to open the border prison gate, right? That's right, Dracula replied. But that's just a temporary measure. As you can see, tonight, my race has returned to the world as scheduled, repeating this endless curse. He shook his head and flicked his cloak. I have had enough. In the past, I've always wanted to destroy the holy amulet so that my race could break out of the inferno and rule the world. But now, I understand that this place is just another inferno. As the Count spoke, his tone became a little agitated. I've watched the activities of you humans in the world year after year. Your depravity and arrogance are unimaginable to me. Your cruelty and greed astonish me. What you do makes the demons of the inferno feel inferior. At this point, Dracula's face showed a look of disappointment. I gradually realized, even if my race came to this world, we would not be able to conquer you, because humans are the most terrible monsters in the world. If the inferno and the human world are integrated, humans will soon climb to the top of all dark creatures through learning and evolution and become the strongest race. Then, you will willfully transform any space that you can set foot in according to your own will. So, Rual, you heard this and continued in a low voice. You want to isolate these two spaces forever. It's midnight. At this moment, Dracula's tone became calm again. You can start the ritual. As he spoke, he slowly stepped back. After you open the border prison gate, I'll enter the gate and use my power to temporarily suppress its expansion. He looked at the two players. And you have to throw the amulet into chaos as soon as possible, and then escape with all your might. He looked up at the entrance of chaos again. When two completely opposite forces merge, it will create a huge space-time fault. The nature of this fault is similar to the border prison gate, but it's more powerful. When the two come into contact, the connection between the two worlds will be completely severed. The holy amulet and chaos will disappear forever. Hearing this, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling exchanged glances and quickly reached a consensus. Although they were not entirely sure if what Dracula said was true, one thing was for sure. No matter what, as long as the border prison gate was successfully opened, their mission would be completed. As for whether Dracula would fall out with them after that, and whether the amulet would really produce the kind of reaction the Count described after entering the chaos, it did not affect them at all. Okay, we can believe you. A few seconds later, Ruo Yu looked at Dracula and said seriously, But I have one last question. Ask away, the Count replied concisely. If everything is as you said, Rual, you asked, then what will happen to you at the gate? Humph. Dracula's face showed a bitter smile. If I'm lucky and my body and soul are not destroyed, I should be able to return to the Inferno. Dong, dong, dong. When midnight arrived, the bell tower on the top floor of the Time Tower emitted a series of bell chimes. At that moment, Feng Bujua, Long Almin, and Tan Lang stood across from each other in silence. The three of them did not agree on anything, but they had a tacit understanding that, when the last bell rang, it would be the start of the battle. Dong, dong, dong. He dares to say something like 100%. Tan Lang looked at his brother Ju and thought to himself, there has to be a limit to how arrogant you can be. Now that we've all turned into children, Brother Long is stronger than you in every aspect with his size alone, and you definitely won't have the combat ability of the Blood Corpse God to kill me in one hit. On our side, one is the main attacker, and the other is the support. Even if we can't win quickly, we can wear you down, dong, dong, dong. Long Almin was also thinking to himself, even though Brother Feng is indeed very powerful, saying that he has 100% confidence. Isn't that a bit too much of a bluff? Is this some kind of psychological tactic? Is he trying to make us anxious at the beginning of the battle? Or is he trying to use this momentum to make us not afraid? Dong, dong, I'm sorry, both of you. 1 second before the 12th ring, Feng Bujua suddenly said, due to the consideration of time, I'll finish this as soon as possible. Dong. By the time he finished speaking, the final bell had already rung. At that moment, Long Almin rushed forward, and Tan Lang followed closely behind him. Brother Long's strategy was straightforward. He used a shield bash to test the opponent's skill level. After all, he had the advantage in physical skills, and he had a teammate with level S medic mastery behind him, so there was no reason for him to be afraid. Facing this sudden attack, Feng Bujue stood where he was and crossed his arms before his chest to block. He did not even activate the shield effect of Death Poker. Duan. 2 seconds later, Brother Ju's shield landed squarely on Brother Ju's arms. There was the sound of bones cracking, and then Brother Ju was sent flying with blood gushing out of his mouth. Hey, so this guy is just bluffing? That's not surprising. After all, this is Feng Bujue's favorite trick. I don't think so. I still remember the Battle of the Butterfly in Arena S1. When he started the battle with Su Huaishang, he also said that he only used 8% of his power. At the time, I thought he was exaggerating, but after the battle, it looks like he was telling the truth. But this time, he was beaten until he coughed up blood. He even said something like, finish this as soon as possible. Is he talking about the kind of finish this as soon as possible? But why do I feel like this is a trap? It looked like the audience had some doubts about Brother Ju's performance, but no one was 100% sure that Feng Bujue would not be able to fulfill his promise of victory. There was only one reason, and that was because he was Feng Bujue. Don't let your guard down. He's not dead yet. On the clock tower, before Brother Ju landed on the ground, Tan Lang yelled to remind his teammate, don't worry, until he disintegrates in a white light. I will not let my guard down. Brother Long knew that even if he had a huge advantage over Feng Bujue, he could not be so sure that he would win. Once that thought crossed his mind, he would not be far from death. Bang! In the blink of an eye, there was a stomp on the ground. Brother Long stomped on the ground and chased after Feng Bujue. He wanted to hit him before he could regain his footing. However, Brother Ju did not regain his footing. After flying back for several meters, his back slammed heavily into the wall, creating a circle of giant, spiderweb-like cracks. His body was stuck in the middle of it in a shape, and he was unable to move. What's going on? Long Almin and Tan Lang thought at the same time. Is this an act? Is this some kind of trap? That's impossible. Feng Bujue would not be defeated so easily. Feng Bujue would not be defeated so easily. At that moment, Brother Ju, who was slumped against the wall, suddenly opened his mouth and voiced everyone's thoughts. That's what you're thinking, right? Brutal Tackle, Voodoo Blast. Brother Long and Tan Lang used 2 skills to reply to Feng Bujue. They really could not read Feng Bujue's mind, and no one could read his mind. The only thing they could do was try their best to not make any mistakes under reasonable circumstances. Ha! Ha ha! Just as the two's attacks were inches away, Feng Bujue laughed madly. Hum! In the next second, accompanied by the sound of energy gathering, a strange magic circle formed by black light appeared in front of him. Long Aomin's shield and Tan Lang's stone hammer, these two legendary equipment, landed on the magic circle. Ripples spread through the magic circle, and then the two felt a powerful recoil being transmitted back through their weapons, sending them flying. Damn it! Tan Lang, who was sent flying, finally understood why Brother Ju did not use this skill when he was first hit. They shouldn't have attacked at the same time. This isn't Death Poker's shield. Brother Dragon, who was also flying in the air, was shocked. What the hell is this? Name: Madman's Poker item type. Sorcery weapon quality. Legendary offense points. Element: I believe I'm a sadist special effect 1. Seamless. The number of Madman's Poker cards will always be 54. Special effect 2. Twist: Madman's Poker does not accept cheating, so every card in this deck is treated as an ace of spades, and any combination of more than 5 cards is treated as a straight flush. Special effect 3. Demonic movement. Madman's Poker cards' attack speed and hit rate are extremely high, and because of that, its license has been revoked. Special effect 4. Frenzy. Madman's Poker values fairness, so when fighting against many, it will direct the power of its enemies to clash with each other. Of course, it will only allow this to happen once a day because it believes fairness is a dangerous friend. Special effect 5. Frenzy. Madman's Poker card is filled with curiosity toward death, but it still loves to ensure its own safety through slaughter. When asked why, its answer is, I don't like to get to the bottom of things. Equipment requirement. Do you think you're my master? Only a madman would think that. Ha ha. Remark. A powerful soul has completely mastered Gambit's power shard and turned it into a scary weapon. This deck of cards carries the power of consciousness that transcends death and fear. And it's, hey, who is spouting nonsense in my remark? Where are you from? And you, what did this guy tell you? Oh well, that's not important. No matter what he said, you don't know anything. Do you understand? Chapter 10:31. The dusky clouds retract their chill, and the silver moon turns the jade plate silently. The night in this life is not long, and where will the bright moon be next year? Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the monthly preview. Since I am too lazy to write my own limerick, I have invited Dongwa, no, Dompa Ascetic to do it for me. There is no need for you to mind these details. Let us focus on the writing progress. In September, I have completed the great feat of being fully present. Yes, even if you're narrowing your eyes before the screen and giving me a condescending look, I still have to say that this is a great feat. In October, I will maintain this pace of updating, but I will still choose a random day to ask for a leave of absence. In terms of the plot, due to the fact that the current script is getting longer, the finals of S2 will have to be delayed. Currently, I am coming up with the content for the semifinals, and you will see that very soon. In any case, the finals will start before the end of October. You have to believe in me. Believe in me. My personal prediction is S2 will end before New Year's Day 2016, and then it will be the last big part of the story. Based on this speed, perhaps by the end of next year, Thriller Paradise will have reached its final stage. I have digressed again. Let's talk about something else this autumn. Many things have happened in my life, and most of them are not things to be happy about. My elders have passed away, my loved ones have fallen ill, and there are some problems with my own body. Of course, I can still hold on, so don't worry. Like I said, as long as I can write, I will continue to write. Lastly, I have to remind those who have monthly tickets, there will be a double promotion during November, so if you can, please vote for me. The number of times I can ask for tickets in a year is limited, and this time, I am not trying to fight for anything. It is just that I've been mocked by many of you before, saying that because it do not update often, I am unable to gather enough monthly tickets, so I'm trying to see how many tickets I can gather if I'm fully present for 2 months. Chapter 1032. Be careful. This guy's sorcery weapon has changed. Tan Lang adjusted his posture in midair and fired a healing chain at Long Almin, bringing both of their life points back to 80%. Even if you told me to be careful, Brother Long replied, I have no idea what kind of effect his new weapon has. That was the truth. Facing a new weapon or skill, what could he possibly be careful of? You'll find out soon enough. At that moment, Feng Bujue finished his sentence. He leaped into the air and used body enhancement spell and Jeppo to catch up to Long Almin. What's going on? Why did he target Brother Long first? At that second, Tan Lang's mind raced. With his analytical ability, he should have known the effect of Orichalcon's shield before the match. Shouldn't he target me first? Who is weaker in defense? With that in mind, a very bad thought crossed Tan Lang's mind. Could it be he has already figured out how to counter Orichalcon's aura? Chi. The next second, the sound of wind breaking interrupted Tan Lang's train of thought. Both his and Long Almin's expressions turned to shock and fear in that second. The stack of poker cards in Feng Bujue's hand shot out like a geyser. Instantly, thousands of poker cards shot out. The poker cards were like black feathers. They danced in the air and covered the sky within a 100-meter radius. What the? There are so many of them. Brother Long looked at the black poker cards in the sky and could not help but scream. Yes, there are so many of them, Feng Bujue replied. Then he used both of his hands to grab a black light card and swung them madly at Brother Long's shield. You want to use 2 cards to cut through the shield of God? At that moment, Brother Long was in a frenzy. He knew that he would not be able to outrun his opponent with speed alone, so he gritted his teeth and used Stone Skin and Rebirth to tank the attack. Why don't you give it a try? The effect of these 2 skills, one increased his defense, and the other gave him a small amount of life points when he was attacked. Both skills were skills that could last for 1 minute and 30 seconds respectively. They were very useful against high-speed attacks. But if that is the shield of God, after Feng Bujue saw the skill effect, he did not think much of it. Mine is the shield of demons. Xing. Before he could finish his sentence, Death Poker had already drawn black marks on Orichalcon's shield. Card assassination had the effect of, when using card weapons in close combat, speed, strength, and accuracy increased by 300%. It gave Brother Ju's every attack a great deal of damage. Even though Brother Long had activated his defensive skill, he could not break through Orichalcon's defense. Of course, even if his defense was broken through, Brother Long did not suffer too much damage. With the recovery effect of Rebirth, his life points decreased at a rate of 5% every 3 seconds. Good. You are indeed powerful. As Long Almin parried, he added, but even if you have the upper hand in a one-on-one battle, don't forget that I have a teammate. Furthermore, didn't you say you wanted to end this as soon as possible? I don't think you can do that, right? Teammate? Feng Bujue replied with a chilling smile. You mean him? As he spoke, his eyes glanced to the side in the air. At that moment, Long Almin was afraid. He was afraid to turn his head in the direction that his brother Ju was looking at, because he knew something that he did not want to see had happened there. Finally, amid Tan Lang's screams, Brother Long turned his head to look, and then he saw his teammate being torn into pieces by hundreds of cards that looked like they were alive. The scene was like a swarm of locusts eating crops or piranhas eating their prey. The cards that came from all directions could not be blocked or evaded. Tan Lang was instantly turned into white light. Long Almin looked at his brother Ju, but he did not know what else to say. He and Tan Lang did not let their guard down, and they did not underestimate their enemy. They gave it their all, but they lost because of the simplest thing, power. Brother Long, we are old acquaintances, Feng Bujue said. I didn't lie to you when I said 100%, right? Hearing that, Long Almin chuckled. Even though he had not been killed, he understood that when the black cards rushed at him, everything would be over. Orichalcum's shield would not be able to block this kind of attack that came from all directions. Brother Feng, you're different from when you were in room S1. 2 seconds later, Brother Long continued. In this competition, I can feel that you really want to win. Indeed, when Brother Zhu replied, his hands did not stop attacking. Due to various reasons, I have to be more serious. Ha ha ha, Long Aomin laughed. But the competition that follows is not something that you can win just because you want to. No, I will continue to win. When Feng Bujua said that, black data flowed in his eyes. I will use my hands to open up the future, to get what I want, to change this world. Objectively speaking, his speech was quite Shinibu. So many in the audience were excited when they heard it. You can't do that with just the title of champion, can you? Brother Long asked darkly. Huh? Brother Zhu scoffed and replied with a hidden meaning. Brother Long, you and I both know this is not just a game, right? When that was said, Long Aomin's expression shifted. However, before he could say anything, he was hit by the black cards that came from behind him. His body was quickly consumed and dissolved into light. On the other hand, outside of chaos, after the clock struck midnight, Xiao Ling held the translation of the spell that Xiao Tan had copied and the amulet in her other hand, and she started to chant. Li Ruyu, on the other hand, was in charge of guarding in front of her, ready for battle. Although Dracula had retreated more than 10 meters away and stood there motionlessly, the players would not let down their guard before the ritual took effect. Current quest completed. All main quests completed. You have completed the scenario. Automatic teleportation in 180 seconds. At the last stage of the chanting, 2 system announcements suddenly appeared in Ruo Yu and Xiaoling's ears. They understood immediately. Brother Zhu had finished the battle with Blade. Like he said before he left, he would be able to deal with the enemy in 3 minutes after midnight. However, both of them chose to maintain their composure and maintain the status quo. Soon, Xiao Ling finished chanting the spell, and when she finished the last word, a black hole the size of a human eye appeared above the amulet. Now is the time. Quickly toss the amulet into chaos. Dracula was ready and yelled at the 2 players. Side quest completed. The system announced that all their quest lines in this scenario had been completed. At this point, the players had nothing to worry about. Xiao Ling glanced at Ruo Yu, and the latter nodded. Therefore, Xiao Ling followed the Count's order and tossed the amulet into the entrance of chaos that was pulsing with black energy. At that moment, a strange wave radiated from the entrance, and it caused a psychological impact on every living being in the space. Thankfully, the feeling was fleeting, and some of them did not even notice the change that had happened to the world. Thank you, travelers from another world. When Dracula said that, he knelt down on one knee and wrapped himself in the cape. His whole body started to shake. Now, if you do not wish to die, run as fast as you can. It was hard to say whether he wanted to say it or not, because before he could finish a sentence, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling had already started running. The expansion, speed, and gravity of the Hell's Door was indeed crazy. It not only expanded its radius to more than 5 meters in the blink of an eye, it also sucked in everything that it came into contact with. Thankfully, the 2 from Underworld Frontline had magic brooms in their hands, and they managed to cover a distance of more than 100 meters in a flash. At that moment, many of the audience members who were watching the game were confused. Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling could have just teleported out of the scenario, so why did they have to run? Actually, the answer was simple. After experiencing so many things, they wanted to see whether Dracula's earlier long speech was true or not, and where this scenario world would go from here on out. O Purgatory, witness my final power. The Count, who had maintained his composure throughout, roared, and his trembling body suddenly morphed and expanded into a giant monster that looked like a mixture of many demons. It seemed that everything he said was true. After revealing his true form as the Demon King, Dracula really took the initiative to jump into the border prison gate. He spread his limbs and released a shocking amount of demonic energy, suppressing the expansion of the gate. What he needed to do was to hold on for a while until the space fissure formed by the interweaving of chaos and holiness expanded to a size larger than the Hell's Gate. By then, the Hell's Gate would no longer be able to reverse the gap, and the Count, as he said, if he was lucky, he could still retreat into purgatory. Bang, 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 bang. The space fissure did not disappoint. It expanded faster than the Count expected. It looked like it would take less than a minute for it to exceed the size of the Hell's Door. But the development of things had indeed far exceeded Dracula's expectations. Even though he was one of the most powerful demon kings in Hell, before the power of the entire dimension, he was like an ant. He was like an ant trying to shake a tree. He was in great pain and was unable to completely stop the expansion of the Hell's Door. This. 30 seconds later, Dracula was forced back into his human form. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his whole body was trembling. Could it be that I can't escape this reincarnation? At this moment, suddenly, a low groan sounded, and a figure appeared beside the Count. The Count did not turn his head, but he already knew who it was. The mummy could not speak. He just silently contributed his own strength and grabbed the edge of the Hell's Door. Then, a second and third figure appeared. The werewolf and the gill-man also appeared from the vortex of hell and pulled the edge of the black hole together with the Count. After another 2 seconds, Frankenstein also came to the door and joined them without saying a word. The Count's pressure suddenly lessened a lot. He seemed to be able to hold on, but he still said with a bitter smile, "Old friends, you might disappear because of this. Indeed, each of these classic monsters in the old movies possess considerable strength. However, even if the 5 monsters worked together, they could only stop the expansion of the Hell's Door, and each of their energy was rapidly depleting. Seeing that the comparison between the space-time crack and the Hell's Door was about to reverse, the monsters had reached their limit. Just when they thought there was nothing they could do, I didn't expect. Another voice sounded from the Hell's Door. There would be such a day. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man with a beard and a white shirt and black vest. His name was Van Helsing. I am actually standing beside you." Van Helsing became the 6th person to come to the door, joining Dracula and the others. Now, he was naturally a ghost who had wandered in hell for 100 years. The Count laughed. "I just did what I should do and what I can do." This was what Van Helsing said to him a century ago. Today, Dracula finally understood Van Helsing's state of mind at that time. Van Helsing was silent for half a second before saying, "Let us." The Count continued, "End all of this." Several seconds later, the space-time crack finally exceeded the boundary of the Hell's Door and started to devour the Hell's Door's power. The 6 figures in the Hell's Door also retreated after a simple exchange and were sucked into the vortex of the Hell's Door. Seeing this, Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling chose to leave the scenario because they believed that the plot was about to end. If they continued, it would probably be the collapse of the Hell's Door. Sure enough, after they turned into light and left, the 2 forces that transcended space-time were like 2 violent beasts. They started to fight in this land of oblivion, and the victor was decided in an instant. In the end, only a tiny black that remained in the air. In an instant, it released a collapsing force that was 100 times stronger than the 2 doors, and in a matter of seconds, the entire castle was sucked into it. 15 seconds later, in a primitive world formed by data streams, Feng Bujue opened his eyes. Yes, he did not teleport. He stayed in the Hell's Door until the very last second. Therefore, he came here. How is this possible? At that moment, not far from Feng Bujue, there was a figure standing. When he saw his brother Ju, he was shocked. The person looked about 30 years old and had a head of white hair that reached his neck. His head had normal human skin and appearance, but below his neck, there was a mercury-like material. It was like liquid metal that had just solidified. Even though there was an outline, there were no details. Infinite. Feng Bujue called out the person's name directly. Our last conversation didn't end, right? Without waiting for the other person to answer, he continued. The second way to kill you that you didn't say. I have a rough idea. He paused. Is it through formatting and erasing you at the server level? Chapter 1033. That is correct. Due to the existence of Special Plan F, Infinite had to answer Brother Jew's question truthfully. I believe many of the audience have already forgotten about this setting, so I have decided to explain it again to save everyone the trouble of flipping through the previous chapters. The so-called Special Plan F was a set of codes that Zero had secretly implanted into Infinite's body. This happened not long after S1 ended. Under Woody's direct order, Zero abandoned part of his power and infiltrated the space-time data transmission layer to complete this. At the time, Infinite had not fully formed, so he had no recollection of this, and the effect of Special Plan F was to prevent Infinite from lying to Fong Bujue, to prevent him from attacking Fong Bujue, and to prevent him from revealing known information to Fong Bujue. At first glance, this plan appeared to be helping Fong Bujue, but in reality, it was used by Woody to protect Infinite. It was because of this plan that Infinite avoided contact with Brother Jew. According to Woody's original plan, Infinite should have consumed loot during the Ragnarok event. Infinite's original design was based on loot, and thus complete his final evolution. However, no one would have thought that Fong Bujue had entered the data layer through a space-time rift in a scenario, and within 15 seconds, he had arrived at Infinite's location. Very good. After Fong Bujue received the other's response, he asked, "Then, with my current power, can I complete this operation?" Infinite did not answer this question because before Brother Jew finished, he had already slipped away. As one of the strongest anomalies, his mobility in the world of data was very impressive. In an instant, Infinite morphed into a stream of light and disappeared. 3 seconds later, on the other side of the space-time data transmission layer, Infinite's figure once again condensed at this place. The process of reassembling was similar to a data puzzle. Streams of light rapidly converged, forming a rough whole. Then, the pixels on his appearance increased at a uniform speed, and his figure became clearer from blurry. Answer my question. The next second, the scary thing happened again to Infinite. Fong Bujue's voice came again from not far away. Infinite turned his head and saw the calm Brother Jew, and he could not help but reply, "Yes, with your current power, you can complete this operation. Tell me the exact method," Fong Bujue quickly said, and Infinite ran away again. This time, the escape time was still 3 seconds. It looked like this was the shortest time for Infinite to perform a warp in the data layer. "Why are you running?" But Fong Bujue followed him like a shadow, appearing at a new location almost at the same time. "Speak." First, Infinite's expression was very tense and heavy, but he could not control the words that came out of his mouth. "Destroy my body structure and observe the pattern of the data during the process of my recovery and reassembly," thus locking onto my original code. After he answered this, he ran again. Another 3 seconds later, the two of them changed locations again, but the situation did not change. "Continue," Fong Bujue said again. Second, Infinite continued, "Use Chuck Norris's autobiography to analyze my original code." This time, he did not run because he realized that moving would not solve the problem. Third crack. So Infinite tore his chin. "Heh, that's a good idea," Fong Bujue laughed. "But with your self-healing ability, this level of injury," before he could finish his sentence, his opponent's chin had already recovered. But Infinite immediately repeated the action of tearing his chin, destroying his speech organ for the second time. "All right, to let the conversation progress." Fong Bujue shook his head and said, "How about this? I won't ask you that question for now, and you can stop this self-harming behavior. How about that?" Hearing this, Infinite quietly waited for his chin to recover for the second time, and then said, "Sure." He was not afraid that Brother Jew was tricking him. After all, as long as he was willing, he could destroy his mouth again in half a second. "How did you find me?" This time, Infinite asked a question before Brother Jew could. "Analyze it yourself," Fong Bujue replied without even thinking about it. Are you trying to test my logic circuit? Infinite muttered. Umph. No worries. He was silent for 3 seconds, and then said, I understand. When I scanned you last time, even though I was not infected by the virus you carried, you used it to leave a code similar to a tracking beacon on my body. Ha! 3 seconds. Fong Bujua heard this, and then said in a mocking tone, far inferior to me. If what you said is true, then that's strange. Infinite said in a low voice. Even if the human brain's usage rate has increased in this dimension, your ability has already far exceeded the range of a normal person. Other than that, you can actually use the same method as me to move through the data layer. These signs all show that I already possess part of the characteristics of an anomaly. Brother Jew interrupted him and finished what Infinite was about to say. Then he spread out his hands and said, all right, I have a rough idea of what's going on with your logic circuit. With Ed and Link's level, to be able to create an existence like you is indeed a breakthrough. He paused for half a second. Of course, to me, it's just that. Whatever you say. Infinite's expression and tone showed that he was not happy with Brother Jew's words and actions. Different from the last time they met at the matchless combat arena, the current Infinite had an obvious change in personality. After all, one of his two designers was Link, who considered himself a gentleman. This guy placed a lot of importance on the personality simulation program. Therefore, as the degree of evolution increased, Infinite's personality would also become more and more distinct. Right? At this time, Fong Bujua suddenly asked, have you already gotten Ed and Link out of Pi's labyrinth? He asked the question very quickly, and Infinite's hand was also very fast. When he finished, the latter's chin was torn off again. Oh, that means they have already come out. Fong Bujua looked at him mockingly and laughed. You see, sometimes it's the same even if you don't say anything. If you didn't save them, you wouldn't have to hide anything, right? After saying that, Brother Jew took out Chuck Norris's razor from his inventory and said slowly, unfortunately, their exact coordinates, if I don't hear from you personally, I won't know. He raised a razor, so I'd better finish the first 2 steps you mentioned earlier. Ka! As Fong Bujua said that, he flipped the razor switch. But, just as he was about to shave his head, suddenly, Infinite moved again, and, after he disappeared this time, Brother Jew could no longer sense the existence of the beacon. It's similar to what I expected. 2 seconds later, Fong Bujua calmly turned off the razor and said, after analyzing the beacon, he immediately corrected the calculation mechanism of all his programs, and then used a new algorithm to perform an emergency self-check. At the same time, he used verbal communication to test my intelligence. He tapped his forehead with his finger. After completing the inspection of the beacon, he didn't immediately move, but continued to talk to me quietly. He wanted to gather more information about me, until I suddenly asked him a question and showed my killing intent. Then he deleted the beacon and instantly fled. Brother Jew crossed his arms in front of his chest and took a few steps with his head down. Based on the inspection time, his execution speed is quite shocking. Then why did you purposely let him go? At that moment, a voice suddenly came from Fong Bujua's side. He turned his head toward the voice, and what entered his sight was a fair-skinned beauty wearing a black leather bodysuit. Ah, looks like I'm not the only one who knows how to leave a beacon on others. The moment Fong Bujua saw 23, he had already thought of many things. From this point, it could be seen that Brother Jew was not lying. His reasoning speed was indeed much faster than Infinite. Let me guess. You secretly left it on me when we were at Harem City, right? Fong Bujua asked. That's right. 23 answered honestly. That way, as long as you enter the data world outside the scenario, I will be able to sense your coordinates. Oh, Fong Bujua said. Then, you've been watching from the dark? Yes. 23 nodded in confirmation, and then said, if I'm not mistaken, you never planned to kill him. Not necessarily. Fong Bujua shrugged. If everything went smoothly and he told me everything I wanted to know, I wouldn't mind killing him. But the chance of that happening is very small. 23 added. Ha! Life doesn't always go our way. Feng Bujue said with a smile, so I've prepared that most likely countermeasure. As he spoke, he put away the razor. Letting him go is naturally part of this countermeasure. I don't understand. 23 thought about it and said, based on my observation, the result of your test earlier is that the beacon you left on him has been removed, and you've already alerted the enemy. In that case, you won't be able to control what he will do next, right? Yes, that's the effect I want. Feng Bujue answered calmly. Hearing that, something seemed to flash across 23's eyes. So that's how it is, what? Brother Ju asked. Aren't you going to ask for the reason? There's no need. 23 replied. Since you said that, it means that everything is within your calculations. I only need to know this point. Oh. Feng Bujue answered casually and then asked, then, the reason you're here this time is to tell me that you've been following me? 23's expression changed slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he replied, just treat it as, I came to see a friend. No, you didn't just come to see a friend. Feng Bujue shook his head. You have something else to say. 23 and Brother Ju looked at each other. His expression became very complicated. I have a question to ask you. At the same time, in the inner world, in the void domain, a stream of light flashed out of nowhere, and then a figure appeared out of nowhere. 2 seconds later, along with bursts of heat, Infinite's figure appeared in front of Ed and Link. Link's appearance was the same as before. He had the appearance of a white man around 40 years old. He had neat sideburns and a clean, white face. He was wearing a black tuxedo and a pair of shiny leather shoes. He had gloves, a bow tie, a top hat, and a cane in his right hand. And Ed was very different from the last time he appeared. Last time, when he appeared in LJN Theme Park, he was wearing a normal black shirt and pants, but his head was in the state of a liquid silver ball. He was even ridiculed by Loot as a slime. As for the current AI, he had completely changed his appearance, becoming a white, three-dimensional little person in a toilet. Yes, you did not see it wrong. It was a toilet man. It was the human symbol that one would see on the door of the male toilet when one went to the public toilet. His head was round and was separated from his neck. His body was made up of the simplest and thickest lines. Of course, in the world of anomalies, he was not that ugly. Their aesthetic was different from humans. Other than a few exceptions like Link, most of the anomalies did not care about their appearance and would not purposely rewrite the relevant code. Oh, what happened to you? Link saw Infinite and raised both his hands to make a shocked expression. It's just an overload. It's not a big deal, Infinite said as he lowered his head to look at his half-solidified and unstable body. The temporarily rewritten sequence had some errors after moving a long distance. I've already rewritten it and fixed it. Then, Ed's voice came out from his round, white head. What is the reason for your current sorry state? Infinite replied. Feng Bujue entered the space-time data transmission layer and found me. What? Link's expression changed. You didn't say anything, right? Don't worry, I did not mention a word about the twilight of the God's plan, Infinite replied. But he knows that you have already escaped from Pai's maze. Link mumbled. That's good. Other than that, the main reason I came to find the two of you is to tell you. Infinite quickly continued. From Feng Bujue's body, I noticed some phenomena. Chapter 1034, November 13th, in the morning. Yo, you're up. When Feng Bujue came back from his morning run, Ruo, you happened to be cleaning up the living room. Not long after Ruo, you moved in. The two agreed to take turns doing the housework. However, the agreement was one thing. In fact, Ruo, you did more work. After all, girls like to be clean. Most of the time, she would clean up when she couldn't stand it anymore. I've been up for a while. After hearing Brother Ju's words, Ruo, you continued what she was doing and replied without looking up, I was waiting for you to bring breakfast back. Ha! Feng Bujue laughed. We're eating soup dumplings today. Be careful. There was a reason why he laughed so cheekily. Everyone had one or two things that they weren't good at. For example, Brother Ju wasn't good at tying knots, Xiaotin wasn't good at lying, and Ruo Yu, she wasn't very good at using chopsticks. Of course, not very good at using chopsticks didn't mean that she couldn't pick up food. It was just that Ruo Yu didn't learn the correct way to hold chopsticks when she was young, so her chopstick skills were slightly worse than ordinary people's. She didn't have a problem using them normally, but once she encountered tofu, fish balls, and other food that were slippery or easy to fall apart, and things like soup dumplings that were very thin and had soup inside, she would often embarrass herself. In fact, this wasn't a big problem. In a sense, it was still cute. However, when you showed a weakness in front of a cheap person like Feng Bujue, malicious ridicule and teasing were inevitable. Who was our brother Ju? If there was a competition in this world where people fought over food with chopsticks, he would be at least one of the top 10 in the world. When he was a student, as long as he wanted to, he could make his classmates who shared a table with him unable to eat a bite of meat. There was even someone who fought with him in the situation where he used chopsticks to snatch a drumstick in the end. With such a sense of superiority, how could he not repeatedly complain about this matter? Careful of what? Ruo Yu immediately glared at her brother Ju. Isn't it just a soup dumpling? I'll just break it and let the gravy flow out. That's a pity. Isn't soup dumplings just a mouthful of broth? Feng Bujue revealed a sinister smile. Why don't I feed it? You're overthinking it. Ruo Yu interrupted him before he could finish. I've never been fed by anyone since I can remember. So you're already 22 and you still don't know how to use chopsticks? Brother Ju replied. What right does a 24-year-old man who can't even tie his shoelaces have to say that about me? Ruo Yu's sarcasm skills had improved, and she was on par with her brother Ju when it came to sarcasm. Feng Bujue laughed even more wretchedly. I don't mind if you help me tie it. I see. Ruo Yu snorted. How about we make a bet? Oh, what kind of bet? Brother Ju was also interested. 1 week. I'll practice chopsticks, and you'll practice tying knots. Ruo Yu continued. After a week, I promise that I can pick up anything that you can pick up safely, but you have to promise that you can tie the knots that I know how to tie. At this moment, Feng Bujue was a little scared. Are you scared? Ruo Yu asked. Brother Ju laughed dryly. I almost forgot how to spell the word scared. He forced himself to look confident. Let's make a bet. What do you want to bet? As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately said, Oh, let me make it clear in advance. I have to consider requests like rolling into sheets. I'm a righteous person. In the next second, before Ruo Yu could say anything, Arthas, who was lying on the sofa, complained, During those years in hell, meow, I've heard and seen many shameless words and deeds, but within the scope of my knowledge, you're the only one who can perfectly mix shameless and cheap, meow. When Ruo Yu heard this, she looked at Arthas expressionlessly. I say, no matter what, he's still my boyfriend. Don't you think I have bad taste when you talk about him like that? No, this isn't a matter of bad taste, meow. Arthas replied. It's fine if you only look at his face, but you still chose to date Feng Bujue after understanding his personality. I can only say that you're a weirdo. She paused and scratched the back of her neck with her claws. Speaking of which, you're really a weirdo, meow. When Ruo Yu heard this, she thought for a moment. Then the bet is, hey. Brother Ju couldn't help but shout. You're suddenly changing the topic. Ruo Yu ignored him and continued. This bet, if I win, unless I'm in a good mood and want to intervene, otherwise from now on, all the housework will be done by you. What does for now on mean? Feng Bujue replied. If we get married in the future, wouldn't I have a few decades of labor in advance? If you don't dare to bet, just say it, Ruo Yu said. TSK. Feng Bujue raised his eyebrows. Then what if you lose? From now on, I'll tie your shoelaces, Ruo Yu replied. Okay, you said it, Feng Bujue said loudly. Yes, I said it, Ruo Yu replied calmly. After pausing for a second, the two said in unison, It's a deal. Sigh. Arthas sighed and shook her head. What two weirdos, meow. A few hours later, at 10 o'clock in the morning, Feng Bujue's login lobby. Who would believe that you're organizing your stuff in the login lobby alone? Brother Ju began to complain as soon as he stepped into the elevator. Actually, you want to secretly learn how to use chopsticks in the game world. You're probably searching for related videos on the touchscreen right now. As he muttered, he shamelessly opened a search engine page on the touchscreen and typed in the words, "how to tie a knot." For the next hour, he used unprecedented concentration and enthusiasm to study knot-tying techniques. Even though he had told Rainey that he was going online to gather information about the competition, the truth was that the two of them were doing the same thing. An hour had passed without him noticing. After looking at a large number of pictures and tutorials, Fong Bujue closed all the websites, took 2 steps back, opened his arms, and shouted to the sky like the main character in The Shawshank Redemption when he regained his freedom, "It's so hard." Again, everyone has 1 or 2 things that they're not good at. To make a long story short, Brother Ju finally opened the Dream Company's official website and forum to look for information about the competition. At this time, the top 8 of the tournament for the Best S2 had been released. The names of the 8 teams were placed in the most prominent position on the homepage of the official website. The 8 teams were Regulation, Brahmin, Jianghu, Red Sakura, Warring States, Frontline of Hell, Trash Alliance, and Mountain River. Since there were no 2 teams from the same studio that entered the top 8, and there was no second team that entered the top 8, the teams with first team in their names were omitted from the list. Overall, 6 of the 8 teams were professional teams with studios as their background, and the other 2 teams were formed by individual players. This result was far beyond the expectations of the audience and various intelligence analysis teams. In a team competitive game, a professional team had a huge advantage. A professional team had the resources of an entire studio. Whether it was the coordination of personnel, the gathering of items, or the gathering of information before the competition, they were much better than the wild players. For example, Trash Alliance was a team made up of 4 professional players. Actually, it couldn't be considered a professional team. The so-called professional team didn't just consist of a few professional players. Other than the players, there were many other people who contributed to the team's victory. It was just that these people's work was carried out outside of the competition, so the audience would usually ignore their existence. However, in this year's tournament for the Best S2, under the circumstances of team competition where there was almost no chance of luck, there were still 2 teams from non-gaming studios that made it into the top 8. This result once again made the leaders of the major studios realize that they could not view Thriller Paradise the same way they viewed normal online games. After Fong Bujue saw the list, he narrowed his eyes and said, "At first glance, none of the teams are easy to deal with." He was not wrong. But when he saw the list, he was not surprised because when he saw the matchups for the top 16, he had already predicted which 8 teams would advance to the next round. The problem now was, how would these 8 teams be matched up? One more win, and we'll enter the final. Brother Ju browsed through the website as he read. The final will be a competition between 4 teams, so there will be many variables. Normally speaking, the more variables there are, the more chances the weaker team will have. His eyes moved slightly and stopped at the word regulation. Using this mechanism for the final seems to be to take care of the teams that are not regulation. He paused. Not only will they have to fight 1 less round, it will also increase the chance of them beating the strongest team on the surface. With that in mind, Fong Bujue scanned through every single piece of information on the front page of the official website. Basically, they were all news articles that he could read with just a glance at the headlines. Therefore, he quickly opened the gaming forum to see what he could find there. Just as he opened the forum, Brother Ju was attracted by a hot post of the day that was pinned at the top. The title of the post was Analysis of all the matchups in the semifinals and the prediction of victory and defeat. Fong Bujue clicked on the post and read it. He laughed. So, the forum is very helpful. This post lists all the information that I need to do mental calculations, which saves me a lot of trouble. This way, I can easily store the list in my mind through graphical memory. Then, Fong Bujue ignored the part about the outcome of the match and quickly memorized all the matchup possibilities provided by the other party, including the 28 single matchup combinations and the 105 complete matchups. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he closed the thread. Then, he opened each of the discussion forums and filtered the information at an extremely fast speed, flipping through the post page by page. Given the popularity of the tournament for the best, the number of posts on the forum was imaginable. Even though it was a weekday morning and the forum had various mechanisms to filter out spam posts, the number of posts in each discussion forum was increasing at a rate of 1 post per minute. Oh, that's interesting. Suddenly, Brother Jew's eyes stopped on a post with a very eye-catching title: The Past and Present Life of the Super 8 Trash Alliance. To be honest, the team that Feng Bujue did not want to face at this stage was the Trash Alliance. This was because out of the 7 teams that could potentially become his opponents, Brother Jew knew the least about this team. Of course, this was also because of Hong Hu's plan. As expected of a strategist, he used a strategy similar to Underworld Frontline in the preliminaries and turned on the privacy option. Furthermore, the players in their team were very strong. Most of the time, they achieved victory before their opponents could even figure out what was going on. This caused the video of their matches and the information revealed by the video to be very limited. For a man like Feng Bujue, who had already calculated more than 70% of the factors that would determine the outcome of the match before the battle, the lack of information was a very bad thing. This was especially true when he knew that his opponents were strong, but did not know how strong they were. This made him feel like there was a fishbone stuck in his throat, and he could not sit still. In comparison, if he were to face a professional team, he would have a much easier time. Even if he were to face regulation or gods, it would be the same. After all, most of their information was already an open secret. As long as he had enough data, even if it was a god, Brother Jew would be able to plot against them. Let me take a look. Feng Bujue clicked open the post and realized that it was a long post, and the font was a bright purple that would blind the eyes of the readers. He grumbled. This person is trying to take revenge on society, isn't he? He's trying to force the durability of the reader's eyes to drop to 0. Talking was talking, reading was reading. Feng Bujue stared at the unbearable font and read the entire article with the intention of finding out more information. Then, this is a scam. He really wanted to throw a cup or something, but unfortunately, he did not have anything in his hands. What is this? No wonder the title has a paparazzi style. It's all gossip. What's so interesting about Uncle Trash being in a male idol group in Korea when he was young? Now, he's just an uncle with a pair of sunglasses. Just as Brother Jew was complaining loudly and fiercely, suddenly, a small icon popped up in his social tab. This was a notification that would only appear when a friend sent a message. Seeing this, Feng Bujue opened it without hesitation. He did not expect the person who sent the message was, "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."